Hey, welcome back to the Blue Collar Off-Road Podcast, episode 220 or 232. I'm Graham. I'm here with Luke, Richie, not Cody. It's his birthday today, and he's doing family shit or he's got something going on. So he's not here, but we have Ryan. I can't see your last name. I don't know if you have another name you want to go by.
Stratemann.
Stratemann. Who was telling us before we jumped on here, big was a big TikTok guy, now big Facebook and YouTube guy. Many of you listening may have heard of him doing I'm gonna be honest, I haven't seen it any of I don't think I've seen any of your content. That doesn't mean I haven't seen it and don't know what I was looking at.
Pretty
Well,
much, if you own a clapped second gen, you would know who I am. But outside of that,
then
maybe not.
I'm surprised I don't. So I probably have seen something because I do own a clapped second gen. So damn, okay.
Yeah, he did a really good video on the killer dowel pins and all that other fun stuff that floated by my feed a couple days ago.
Is that a 24 valve issue as well? I know it is, like, kind of, but I thought it was less than a 12 valve.
It does seem much less prevalent than 12 valves, but there are documented cases of up to 2002 24 valves having that timing cover that had the provision where that dowel pin could fall out. I was under the presumption that it was only a 12 valve thing until I got proved wrong. Almost about a year ago, I was like, nah, that's only a 12 valve thing. And no, it really is a 24 valve thing as well. So, yeah, you learn something new every day.
I haven't had to take it off, and I just don't really want to unless I have to. So I just keep saying in my mind that it's not as big of an issue for 24 valves, but you know.
It does seem less like I've never had to fix a 24 valve. They had it fall out, but I promise you the cover's identical, so the chance is just the same.
Mm-hmm. Weird.
And
yeah,
it's a pretty cheap or not a cheap repair, but a cheap kit.
Yeah,
it's cheap, but you got to tear into a bunch of stuff, and I didn't.
You just got to pull the timing cover off.
I don't want to pull it. Yeah, I know it's easy. It's just getting to it.
Oh yeah, maintenance is never fun.
Yeah, no,
and the worst part is whenever you tear it down, just find out yours has the updated cover, and you're like, damn it, I didn't need to do this.
Yeah.
But there's no other way to tell. We tried fitting bore scopes through the front cover and stuff. There's just not enough room to get past the gear, so
that's
you're stuck gambling.
Jeez.
So, how did you get into the Cummins stuff? Because I know you from having that sick Cummins rock bouncer-ish thing, and then the like shitbox diesel stuff. Was the shitbox diesels before the rock crawler or the rock crawler? Like, how'd that all?
So I dropped out of engineering school and didn't have much money in my name, and a buddy of mine lent me $3,000 to buy a 12 valve 5-speed truck that I still own today. It had 265,000 miles back then, and it's got knocking on 400,000 now. And I haven't been inside that motor outside of changing the oil, which is impressive that something has lived that long with me. So I was like, man, that's a pretty durable platform. And the K30 started out as a military ambulance, so it had the piece of crap 6.2 diesel with the turbo 400, 1 tons, and I bought it to sell it for scrap iron. And the old man that sold it to me said, "Hey, that thing still run when I parked it 10 years ago." And I was like, "Yeah, right." Well, I threw batteries in it, and sure enough, it started. And I was like, I got some 37-inch military tires I can bolt on here, and we hacked the fenders up on a stock lift, threw 37s on it, went rock crawling. I was like, "This is fun," and that was back when forums were a thing, so I named the build Cheap But Functional, and ever since then it's been anything but cheap. But I got rid of the 6.2 and put a 383 stroker in it. It had like Edelbrock heads and some EFI on it. I kept having problems with the EFI computers dying, and after the third $450 computer that I had no explanation why it was dying, I gave up on it, sold the motor for 2 12-valve trucks, and I put one of those engines in there. And I really didn't want to. I didn't care about the power. I was like, I just want something that will run reliably and drive over rocks. And then the power thing just kind of, very quickly snowballed out of control. You start with just a fuel pin and a governor spring, and then it's injectors and turbos and valve springs, and then you P-pump swap it, and, now we got a we got a pretty ridiculous engine in there for what it needs to be. That thing doesn't need more than 200 horsepower, but we put it on chassis dyno that made 400 at the tire and 400 horse and 720 foot-pounds or something like that. Through a non-lockup converter. That's a 500 wheel horsepower setup all day long in a stick shift truck. And
Yeah,
it
that's
runs
getting
good.
down.
I almost put compounds on it for this build, but I'm so glad I didn't because it doesn't need them. It's scary enough as it is. And it's hard enough on parts. My 14 bolts, every time I drove it, I broke 4 ring and pinions, and I'm not a dummy. I set up gears every damn day of my life. So that was a depressing step in the wrong direction, was thinking that 14 bolts would be the answer to my axle problems. And
Which
my low
blows my
pinion Dana
fucking
60,
mind.
my low pinion Dana 60 survived longer than my 14 bolts. And I built that one too, so you can't say it was a builder problem, you know?
So, like, what's actually letting go in the 14 bolt? I know you said it's the ring and pinion. Are they just walking out from the amount of torque, or?
No, I don't believe so. I think it's just a gear. It's just the max load that a gear can take. I hit up Tim Cameron because I mean that dude. He's been my like. I'm like a fangirl of his, no lie. And you know, he had 14 bolts back in the day, and I mean, people don't really ever post the bad stuff, so he could have been breaking stuff and not saying anything about it, but he seemed to just podium every damn day, and on 14 bolts, you know. And he finally went to 80s, and so I asked him, and he was nice enough to reply, and he said after he hit 600 horsepower, he kept breaking 14 bolts, so he went to 80s, and he never broke an 80. And I had the opportunity to sell my 14 bolts for 15,000, which I did, which I had 25 in them, and I could have bought a set of 80s for 15. That had the 4-inch or the 2-inch 47 spline over, 300 M shafts and all that fancy stuff. But there's just too many people out there that weigh less than I do on a smaller tire that were blowing the caps off 80s, having gear failures, and I'm just like, I live in South Texas. Anywhere I go that I can party has to be states away, and the last thing I want to do is spend that much coin and have a failure just trying to party, you know? And
Completely and utterly understandable.
there was nothing that caused those 14 bolts to fail. Like I didn't do anything video worthy with the exception of the Insanity Fab race. And out there was no traction. I was on a sticky 47-inch LTB in the mud and snow. Like I never really landed with my foot on the throttle on a ledge. I mean, there's video of the the ass end in the air 3 or 4 feet, but we were having fun, but nothing that I thought would break a ring and pinion. So
So it's just got to be the torque and the weight then.
yeah, uh, f- wait a minute, yeah, we're 5,700 pounds, and on a 47-inch sticky bogger now,
That's just
and
gonna break
yeah, it's just
everything.
yeah, that's why I decided to pull the trigger on the Axle Tex. Um, It's insulting because I could have built axle techs for a lot less than I had in those 14 bolts. Just those Brainic shafts was $5,500 for the front,
Yep,
and
you're crazy.
I picked up these axle techs from Keith Rice for 3,500. And most people are bolting them in without even doing anything. But I'm gonna do the billet U joints because I'm gonna do an offset front housing, so I'm gonna have custom shafts made, and I just don't want to risk them failing. Um, but yeah,
Okay, there's a
that's my
lot
next
to
move.
go into here.
hmm Yeah, I'll just get off rambling, so just stop me if you
No,
need.
feel free to ramble. We fucking love that shit. Makes our lives easier. Um,
Nice.
so with the engine, you said that it's just got, it's well, not just, it's injectors at this point. It's a turbo, like,
It's
uh,
your very basic 500 horse build. There's nothing overly spectacular about it. Really, the only thing I have over most people is I have a benched 215 horse pump with 5,000 RPM governor springs in it, so it parties. We very frequently hit 5,000 RPM with that motor. Um,
fucking nutty.
yeah,
Um,
it's a stock 12 valve block, crank, rods, pistons. Um, we put ARP rod bolts in it and resized the rods just to keep them from flying out at that kind of RPM, and put a fluid damper on it with a max power kit, which is where you drill a hole in the crankshaft and put a pin in there to keep it from walking. But other than that, it's stock bottom end, and those bottom ends are good for 1,000 horsepower. I mean, I'm not even close to beating on the bottom end bad enough to cause failure. Um, and
Meanwhile,
it's
I'm
got
over here looking at mine, and I'm like, I don't like letting you sit at 2,700 RPMs going up a hill.
yeah
Fuck.
that old 400,000 mile 12 valve I have. It's on the stock head gasket with stock head bolts, and I'll hit 4,000 with it, without even thinking. And that thing doesn't owe me a dime. If it blew up today, I'd be like, you did good,
That's why it won't break.
Yeah. So they're pretty
Does
tough units, and they're
I
stupid cheap.
I
I
like
couldn't
mine.
build I couldn't build an LS to make that kind of power, and for anywhere close to how cheap that thing was.
Uh,
And you don't have to worry
So
about
we
computers and stuff. You just hope that the pump doesn't lock up and run away.
Yeah. We've talked about this a bit before with like diesel engine swaps and all that other fun stuff. I know you've got, yours started as a K30. We're normally talking about XJs because we're all poors here. Um, and
My entry level cost was $1,200, so it was pretty cheap back then.
yeah, everything
how an
used to be
XJ
cheap.
now?
Oh yeah, those things are expensive.
Dude, my shitbox started as a rust-free $300 XJ, and I'm looking now, and it's like 3,000 to replace it, and I'm like, holy fuck! It is not worth 10 times that much for an older
Mhm.
XJ. Shit. Um, but do you end up running into issues where it has to build boost before it's building power, or does it just already roll into boost as you're trying to come up a ledge?
So
Like,
that's something that we have had to play with. So it is a Turbo 400 transmission, and it's a non-lockup unit because, believe it or not, a lockup Turbo 400 is like $30,000 from Cone, or any of the reputable builders out there. Just the converter from Suncoast is like $8,000, and I've got well over $100,000 in this rig. We're probably knocking on the door of 150. But I couldn't stomach 30 plus for a trans. So we're running a non-lockup reed case turbo 400 with all the billet goodies. It's got pro mod drums and 300M shafts. I mean, it's built for a lot of power. I could never possibly hurt it with the Cummins. I don't think. Uh, and
as the
but
guy
we
that's
had
putting axle tacks under the rig
Yeah.
to
Well,
replace 14
that
volts.
should alleviate some stress because of the planetaries, and we'll be going from a 410 gear ratio to like 589s or something, and stay in the same size tires. So the drivetrain should see less shock load now. But we had a diesel converter in there from a 6.2, or a Hughes sold like a stock 6.2 diesel converter, and it just blew through it. I could leave max boost in that thing was 60 pounds of boost, and I could hold the brake and make 60 pounds of boost. And yeah, that was awesome for like doing, boost launches and stuff off ledges. But then I started watching some videos, and I'd come down with my foot on the throttle, and the rig's still at 4,000 RPM, 60 pounds of boost, and the tires are like slowing down. And I'm like, okay, that converter's too loose. So I had a custom converter built that's I think it's a 48 RE hybrid. It's been so many years now, but now I have the opposite effect. Now it lugs down the engine too much, which is great for putting power down. It makes a ton more, like whenever it does build boost, you feel it. But we had to add a dump valve to the torque converter to help spool. So yeah, it's not instant throttle response. But if your tires are moving, if you're crawling, and you mash the throttle, it's almost instantaneous. If you are sitting at a ledge and you need to build boost, you're going to have to use the dump valve if you want to build it quickly. But that's why I kept the turbo sizing kind of small. It's got a 63, 68 Borg Warner on it because it still rips, but it does so in a mildly quick manner versus like I could put some S400 on here and make another 100 horsepower, but the response time would be just stupid slow. And if I'm tumbling down a hill, I need a little bit of throttle response to try and keep the tires on the ground.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. I've got an S362 that I'm sitting on, debating if I want to swap the VP44, but my engine's not built nearly that much. That fucking the amount of torque that's going through that thing though is insane. Are you running 1410s
No, 1480 forged everything.
on the drive shafts?
Yeah, and the transfer case combo is the ORD Magnum box with the 1 3/4 shafts, And then the 205 is a cast iron 205 case. It's not a billet one. I should have bought a billet one with the 1 3/4 Northwest Fab output shafts, which are a must if you're making any kind of steam. I can't believe Alex Sanders, I don't know how you say his name, with that rock bouncer, that rib cage. I can't believe he's running I think he's getting away with either stock or 32 spline outputs. But I had the 32 spline output in the front of mine, and I snapped it off whenever I was racing it. And that 1 3/4 shaft just dwarfs it. It's insane how much larger they are. So naturally, the next thing that's going to fail is the case is going to split because the gears are pushing each other apart. So I'm going to probably just spend the coin on a billet 205 case. Which, had I known how much it was going to cost to machine mine out for the bigger shafts, I would have just bought a billet case. Because billet cases are like $3,000, and it cost me like $1,500 to have my case machined. Because I guess there's instances where cast iron can have like hard spots, and so my machinist ran through like a bunch of really expensive bits trying to machine it out.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Yeah.
it's just, what are you gonna do? You're there. I mean, I just
Yeah.
gave the guy a blank check and said, get it done, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh shit, $1,500, whatever, I guess,
So
but
in my other life, I'm a tool and die maker. Cast iron is a fucking son of a bitch because every time that it gets poured, you're getting whatever the mill mixture is, and that includes all of the impurities. So when you're going to machine it, I like to run carbide a little bit on the slow side. And even then, when you hit one of those hard spots, it'll still just fucking chew through the carbide.
yeah. Yeah, so
Sorry.
that was less than exciting. If I would have known that, hindsight's always 20/20. But I never in my life envisioned that I would ever be in the situation where I would be making enough power to ever split a 205 case. So whenever that time comes, I'll put that trophy on my wall, I suppose.
That's fucking wild, though. That's a consideration because, like, Graham, I look to your setup and I'm like, yeah, that's pretty bulletproof for what we're doing. And he's got
Yeah, behind a 4.0.
yeah, it's behind a 4.0, but like it lives behind an LS too without a fucking problem.
Yeah, true.
And then you're over here like, yeah, the 205 is eventually going to be a structural weak point. Fuck.
Yeah. Now,
It
and back
never
to
ends.
the 1480 stuff. I was running Ford's 1480 drive lines back when I had a low pinion Dana 60 because it had 1310. Well, those broke, and I'm like, why am I going to stop in the middle of the road? I'm paying for yokes. I might as well just pay for the good ones, like
That's fair.
1480 flexes more than 1410. So why wouldn't you, unless you're worried about, rotational mass or something. I'm not. So I've never had a drive shaft failure, obviously.
I would hope so.
When Gold Rush had 1410 shafts on it. I'm like, bro, like, I mean, that's a 1,500 horse
Bro.
Pro Charge car or something. Like,
You're
gonna put.
talking about 1410s like they're small. I'm over here like, yeah, I like my stock Cherokee drive shaft that I can sleeve with spare roll cage tubing. And you're like, yeah, 1480s are fucking miniature. Or sorry, 1410s are fucking small, not miniature, but you know what I mean? And I'm like,
Yeah.
I have to cut my fucking floorboard if I want to fit a 1410. So fitting a 1480 in there is like, and I'm not afraid to go and cut the floorboard, but like, fuck, that's a big ass fucking joint
Yeah.
for a
It's
drive
definitely.
shaft.
Yeah, I think I'm running busted knuckles, like build your own drive shaft kits with their billet carrier bearings. I think it's 3/8 wall, 2 3/8 or something like that for the drive shaft material. So
Cool.
I don't imagine I could ever dent it, but I guess I could. I could break a lot of stuff, I guess.
You're putting axle tacks under it, so because the 14 bolts aren't good enough. You're out of our fucking league here.
Yeah, I never wanted to be in this position, but if I had stuck with a gas motor, and a friend of mine, because I was always comparing myself to these guys that are running 1,000 horsepower rock bouncers and somehow are getting by with, making an entire season on a 14-bolt gear set, but they weigh 1,000 pounds less. They make more power than me, but they're probably running like really high stall converters. And so whenever you come down, even if you come down under power, you're not shock loading it as hard as 1,200 foot-pounds that the crankshaft is.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
How
And then
much
they're
does
on
the
a
rig weigh?
43 versus a 47. We weighed it before we completed it, like we just put all the parts and shit in it, and it was like 5,700 without me in it.
To call
So
it
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty
6K
heavy
with
for
a full
1,200.
tank of fuel.
yeah, but it's a
and
4-seat
charging.
rig that's 150-inch wheelbase. So
Gotcha. So it's a limo.
yeah. I built it on 44-inch boggers, and I backed out of the shop, and I'm like, oh god, that looks terrible. I mean, I never wanted it to be 150 inches. It's always been a 143-inch wheelbase rig, and I loved it. You know, everybody said, oh, that thing's just gonna belly up everywhere you go, but most of what I like doing is hill killing. It's not really like technical rock crawling. I'm not even gonna put rear steer in it when I do the axle techs. At least from the get go, I'm not going to, because the axle techs can steer, I want to say 45 degrees or something like that, and that's more than my low pinion 60 ever could. So
Yeah,
I was
40 degrees
spoiled.
is a lot.
I had a 10-inch ram on my um, steering 14 bolt with 1550 Brainic stuff, and so they had like 53 degrees or something. I mean, I had to cut all the steering stops off of the Reed Super Kingpin stuff, and whenever you're at full lock, if you try and put your foot off in it, you really feel that U joint, like the fast, slow effect of the tire. It's
Yeah.
extremely bad when you're turned that far. And so I think because the axle techs have a double cardan joint instead of a U joint. Yeah, I mean, they've got two U joints with like a front drive shaft would on a normal front drive shaft. So I'm hoping that that's not as bad, because that was terrible with the Brainics. I
Okay,
would have
well, I
much
had to look
rather
up a
had like an
picture.
RCV or something.
I had to look up a picture of the rig because 150-inch wheelbase sounds insane, but it really doesn't when you look at the rig
It
with
looks
the tires.
proportional on the
It's very
47s.
proportional. Yes.
On the 47s, it does look
Yep.
proportional. Um, but I also, the rear steer. The reason I'm not doing it initially is because of just cost and extra headache. Like, I am so over putting money in this thing and time. I just want to
Yep.
drive it, beat the snot out of it, load it on trailer, and do it again next weekend. And that's
Mhm.
the way it used to be on 44s and low pinion Dana 60. And then I was like, well, we're gonna, cut the front half of the frame off and put a 14 bolt in it, and then that literally turned into an entire tube chassis build. And ever since then, I just haven't had a successful run where something didn't catastrophically fail, which is lame. And we tried every snake oil that you could put into a 14 bolt. We had the gears cryogenically treated and rim finished. We bought genuine AAM gears. We went to a 4:10 ratio to try and get more contact pattern, just all these things, and nothing worked.
So I'm starting to develop an opinion that cryogenically treating gears is not exactly ideal under a lot of circumstances, because you create a really hard exterior finish, but it doesn't uh, get fully into the material. So you have a really hard outer shell that when it lets go, being harder, it wants to crack, and then it
Yeah.
just peels away. And I
Yeah.
can't
In a ring
prove
and
that
pinion
theory.
scenario doesn't sound very good.
A
Yeah,
friend
I
of mine
can't.
owns a transmission shop where they do manual transmissions, and he
Mhm.
said that he's never seen cryogenically treated gears making more than 10 miles. And so it might have been a
That's
mistake. Maybe that
crazy.
was the ticket. Maybe I shot myself in the foot, but I just, I've, after asking as many people as I did and as many forum posts as I've made and stuff, like, the 14 bolt just is not the ticket for my setup now. If
Yeah.
I was lighter and had less power, it'd absolutely work all day long.
What size shock are you running on the front of that? Because it looks proportional and like,
I have 3.0 16-inch travel shocks all the way around from ADS. Phil Licardi sold me the shock package. I just told him I got $10,000 budget. What can that do? And he was like, well, these are kind of like a really nice shock. And so I just took his word for it. And Tim Cameron
they
had them on his rig, so I guess they're pretty nice. I don't know
they
shit about
fit
shocks.
the rig. So like, or for size wise, and with how big the rig is, I got to
Yeah,
imagine that that upper disc has got to be what, almost 6 inches in diameter.
it's pretty big. Yeah. Um, the old setup had 2.0 Foxes that belonged on like a Jeep. It was terrible. They were oh my gosh, they were bad. But I had 450 pound over or 450 over 400s. I don't remember which one goes on top or bottom, but I had 450 pound per inch coil
Christ.
springs on that thing in the front before when I had the cab on it. And then, so naturally, I told Phil this, and he, told me, so we ordered 450 400s for this new shock package, and I put them on, and I let the lift down, and it didn't squat not even an eighth of an inch. I'm like, what the hell? And so we just kept going and kept going and measuring stuff, and I told Phil, I was like, man, I put a chain hoist weight on it, or whatever, and he's like, there's no way that thing weighs that much. That's like a stock JK spring rate. And sure enough, we ended up with the lightest springs that ADS sells for those coilovers on
No
there.
shit. That's interesting. My fronts are 175 over 250s, and my rears are 150 over 225s. So like to hear that. Then again,
I
those
think
are
mine are
such
150 200s on the rear and 200 250s on the front. I don't remember. If I walked into the shop, we would lose contact for sure.
there's
But
so much more metal in that spring though, so I guess that makes sense even though it's a lighter rate.
yeah, but they definitely, it's nice being able to like, really hit shit and not just immediately bottom out the rig. I really tried my best to have uh even up travel as much as I did down travel. So I kept the rig at the same height that it was on the 44-inch boggers, um, with like 3 times the up travel. So before I had like only like 3 inches up travel. Now I'm at 9. So now I can like hit a ledge and not just immediately bottom out the suspension. So it took a lot of doing. I mean, I had to clearance the transmission adapter for the upper link at full bump, and I mean, it just has,
That
you got to spit
probably
on it
hurt.
at full bump. Yeah, it was, for a guy that just works on mechanicing all day, I think I did all right job. Um,
It's a
but
it's a sick rig. It's very big.
mhm.
That
Yeah, though I have 2 kids, and the wife was like, "You have to make it a 4 seat." I'm like, "Okay, fine." And there was just, honestly, I could have taken 8 inches out of the chassis, but the rear cage is the only portion of that rig that didn't get redone from the original build. Like that's literally the only parts I didn't redo, and it was just a factor of time, money, and like making this deadline for the race as to why I didn't redo that section. And that section alone is why I could not pull 8 more inches out of the chassis. It just wasn't going to work and make it look right. So I just said screw it and I left it. And honestly, the amount of time that I've wheeled it so far, I've probably got 6 hours of seat time on this thing. Absolutely love it. Some people can't deal with anything over 100-inch wheelbase, and I just can't do anything under 135 or something like that. I love the longer wheelbase. It's got its pluses and minuses, but going up a really steep hill, it feels really, really stable.
if you're hill
Obviously, because
killing, that
you're at
makes
the bottom
sense.
and top at the same time.
I'm sitting around a 109, so the thought of like 150 is wild into me, but I imagine that on trying to hill kill, like you said, you're at the top and the bottom of the ledge already.
It's probably
Yeah,
just it's
and
such an
it's not a
odd.
competition rig. It's just I I'm too old to be bouncing around. I don't have the energy anymore to be wrenching on my rig every other race or something like that. So it's literally a trail rig that just has a ton of money put into it. And so if I have to get my buddies to winch me up something, we'll just laugh about it later. I don't care if it bellies up. I built the skids are out of 1/4 inch AR 500. And all the cross members are 1/4 inch 2x3 square tube. So it can take a pretty solid hit on the bottom.
Yeah, I would fucking hope so. Holy shit. Uh, I
So I'm
thought
gonna
that I was going overkill with my half-inch thick belly pan. That's that's fucking wild. 2x3 supporting AR 500. It probably doesn't give a flying fuck.
Oh, we did bend the AR 500 at the Insanity Fab Winter Challenge,
No
but we
shit.
did. I think we landed. It was the only portion of the skid plate that didn't have like a ton of extra webbing. But I was just like, oh, it'll be fine. My buddies were like, oh, you can't bend AR 500. And well, I did.
Yeah, you
But
smash it repeatedly,
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
You come down on stuff hard too. It's crazy what'll happen, a
yeah. We
couple
built
feet.
that whole rig in about 8 months' time. total build time. And I don't know how, like, I go back to Tim Cameron. I'm trying not to sound like his, weird ex-lover or something, but that dude, he's
No,
just,
Tim Cameron's the shit. He's what
dude, I
got
don't know
me and
how.
Richie into wheeling.
Yeah.
I don't I don't know how that guy does it. Like, I own a business, so I can afford kind of to do this stuff. And I just absolutely hate the thought of going out there and working on my rig. I just want to go wheel the shit out of it and not have to work on it. And the fact that he once a season just tears it down and builds a whole new one is just
Well,
insane.
I could be mistaken, but I don't think he does it by himself by a long shot.
Oh no,
Yeah,
you didn't
even
know. He does it all by
I didn't
himself.
do it. I didn't have anybody. I mean, sorry. I didn't do it by myself by a long shot either. I had a ton of good help from friends, my coworkers. I wouldn't been able to do it without a lot of help from people. And I was just like, I would never want to do this again. Like, I'll help somebody else on their shit, but I never want to take on a from scratch build ever again. And some people just enjoy that. I've had friends of mine that will build something, sell it, and build something again. And I'm just like, dude, I can't do it. It's just not for me.
Yeah, I get it. I've had my rig for 7 years now, and like it's slowly progressing onwards into whatever it's going to be. But I don't want to work on it this season. This season, I just want to go wheel it. Like the thought of having to rebuild the front drive shafts pissing me off at this point in time. But whatever. I got to do that before I go back to AOP.
That
I
was
don't
such
know
a
how.
letdown. Sorry,
Was it?
interrupted you there. No, I was just saying AOP. Like, I really, really, really wanted to make the meet and beat, and
Oh, dude, you missed a fucking golden year. I'm not throwing
mhm.
shade at anyone, but this fucking year was goddamn terrible. They need to move that event back 3 weeks into like get it into June at this point if you want to have any hope of it being dry. It was so fucking wet that like I'm watching bouncers that you know like Jason Gruce built Major Pain rig. He was having a hard go of it. There was a couple other people like Dwight from Trail Trash was having a hard go of it. Brad wasn't exactly having the most fun. Uh, and it was just
The,
fucking wet and miserable.
the
Yeah.
mountain got so bad that people took to doing donuts in the field for entertainment.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
So like
Yeah, what rain is fun and all, and I typically do enjoy it, but it gets to a point.
And it was a cold rain too.
Oh, yeah, that's the worst.
yeah, it was 60
Last
degrees and raining the
yeah,
entire weekend.
last year it was like almost 20 degrees warmer and it was warm rain. This year it was cold with cold rain. It sucked.
Yeah, that's anything under 70 degrees. You can count me out.
Yeah,
I'm not
fucking
into that.
sexy. Or however the fuck you want to say it.
But yeah, we built that whole rig, got it done, had 2 hours of seat time on it, and then loaded it up and took it 40 hours north to the Insanity Fab Winter Challenge, and then just gave it hell. And we didn't end up finishing the race, which was a bummer. I miscalculated how much stress I would actually be putting on the chassis, and I ripped an entire rear link mount off of the chassis and destroyed one of those brand new ADS shocks and some other stuff. So that was lame. But we made it through the qualifier and then made it almost an hour into the race. So I called that an accomplishment, and it was a once in a lifetime thing for me. I will probably never do it again because getting up there and getting back is very sketchy in the middle of winter.
Completely understandable.
We got into Montana, and there was side winds that were 70 miles an hour constant, and we're going over a pass in the middle of the night, and I can't see, like, I don't know, 20 yards in front of us. And the truck and trailer, which is a F-250 with a, the K30 weighs what it does on the trailer. And then we had all this gear and spare tires and stuff. It's a heavy combo. And the wind blew that thing sideways on the road. And we were like, yeah, we're pulling over for the night. And we got up the next morning and it was no better. It was just daylight outside. It was miserable. So we got there and back safely. And I think we don't want to push our luck past that.
I can't blame you on that. Um, I'm sorry, I'm still just looking through some of the pictures of the rig and whatnot, and the 14 bolt destruction.
There's a lot of that.
Unfortunately.
It checks out.
Yeah. We were planning on going to AOP. I mean, I freaking had my trailer bought and motorhome, got new tires put on it, filled up with fuel. I mean, the water tanks were full. And we just were like, we're going to go run it and beat the absolute snot out of it at a local park. And if it breaks, we're not going to drive all that way just to break it on the first trail. And it didn't break. And we pulled the diff covers and found cracked teeth. And I was just like, park that son of a bitch. I'm selling it. I'm selling the
Jeez.
axles.
Yep.
And so now we have axle techs in hand, but it's not going to be until like December before I mess with it.
So do those
I got
axle techs bolt together at the center section?
no, it's like a banjo housing, it's a big old cast. Just imagine a cast 9-inch Ford housing that's 7/8 of an inch thick and 6-inch square
Okay,
or something like that. It's
that's
pretty
fairly
massive.
beefy.
Yeah. And they weigh like 1,500 pounds a piece currently, but several people have claimed to have gotten them down to 1,000 or just under 1,000 pounds. And my steering 14 bolt, my drag axle isn't probably but 600 pounds. My steering 14 bolt's every bit of 800, I bet. When we pull it out, I'm definitely going to weigh it for, social media content and all that.
I'm curious about that because I'm pretty sure that my 60 is sitting like 750-ish.
They all pretty damn heavy.
Yeah, fat as fuck.
And then this isn't the only project I got. I got a square body Chevrolet with a motor that we're putting together right now and take it to the engine dyno. It should make 500. It's just a little AFR cylinder headed 383. Nothing crazy, but it does eat up more funding for the K30.
Should still get down and party.
Is it
Yeah,
just going to
yeah.
be a sort of stock thing, stock-ish with beefed up motor, or is there?
Oh, the 77's it's a single cab long bed K20 on 35-inch boggers and 1 tons with Detroit's front and rear. It's just a street truck. I always wanted one since I was a kid. I had a
Yeah.
77 K10 that when I was like 14 years old, and my dad would never let me drive it to town. So I always had this this vision in my head of what I wanted, and so I kind of built that. And shot a rod through the block on the 350, banging the limiter, and then built a 383. Spent a bunch of money on it. I think we were like 12,000 into it, and it made it 1,000 miles before I money shifted it because somebody tried to race me, and I was in fifth gear. And I put it in third
Ooh.
intentionally. I intentionally put it in third, but my helper had gotten in my truck the prior day, and he's got like clown feet. Dude's just really tall, and he ripped out the wires for the tachometer, and so I didn't realize how much RPM I was already turning. And yeah, 456s on 35s at 90 miles an hour, and you drop it in third, you're gonna break some shit. So
Yeah,
it probably
I
hit
bet.
9,000 RPM at wide open throttle, but it was decelerating. Like
Uh,
you floored it, let off the clutch, and and it's engine braking. That's never a good scenario.
no.
And so it dropped a valve, shit canned a piston. Thankfully, I bought forged pistons because it ended up jamming that big old 202 intake valve back through the intake runner, and didn't just shit can the whole bottom end. But we're in the process of repairing that. But uh, everything I touch.
It seems like it, Jesus. So what is you keep talking about the business, and I know, is it primarily a diesel shop, or
Yeah, we
do
do
you do
light duty
everything?
diesel, so
Okay.
2,500 up to 5,500 is primarily what we work on. We have worked on a couple of the like eco diesels and stuff, but
Mhm.
and my brother is like super smart. His technician read on YouTube. He's got like 77,000 followers or something like that. He doesn't post as much on our Facebook as I do, and so everybody thinks we only work on Dodges because that's pretty much all I work on. And so everybody just brings us Dodges. I think we have like 12 or 13 Dodge trucks here right now and like one Ford. But we work on them all. But that's where the money's at for us. It's what we know like the back of our hand, and so that's what we try and stick to. But I don't do any custom work unless I really know you well. Um, because it just doesn't pay. I got burned out on doing custom work at a previous shop that I worked at, where we did like Coyote 5.0 swaps and Broncos and roll cage work and just barf. I do not. Maybe that's part of the reason I don't like working on my personal shit was that job.
I mean, I think I understand why you're saying that. I guess do we want to touch on maybe why you don't like doing the custom work? Just like
For me, there's just so the way the pay, I'm fine with talking about it. The way the
cool.
pay scale was structured at this independent shop was you got paid by the hour that you produced. And so if a job was quoted at 10 hours and it took you 5, great, you made more money. If it took you 20, suck it up, Buttercup. You want the job or not? And one of the things I got burned on probably the most was a roll cage that a good friend of mine was my service writer, and he just way underbid it. He bid a full roll cage that attached to the frame in 4 places on a like 60s Blazer, no 70s Blazer. And you want to talk about something that's hard to build a cage that's symmetrical. You take an old twisted up old 70s Blazer that somebody's not going to put a top on and try and make it look symmetrical. And oh my goodness, they quoted 40 hours for the roll cage, and an
Yeah.
interior
Oh,
swap where I put like 2015 Silverado seats in there and like hooked up the cigarette lighters and like all this, wireless phone charging shit. Yeah, no, I got probably 100 hours in that thing. And that just
Yeah,
repeated
fuck
times
that.
however many times. Because I'm like a bit of a perfectionist. If you watch my videos, I am a perfectionist. But I despise doing fab work because you never make like more like if on an engine job, if it say book times 30 hours and I do it in 25, like I make a little bit more time doing that. But fab work, if you quote it at 10, you're going to be damn lucky if you get it done in 10. And so the way that we do fab work here is it's just by the hour. I'm going to clock in and you're going to pay me for however long it takes. If I go down the road and in 3 hours I figure out shit that ain't going to work, well, you're going to owe me for 3 hours because you wanted me to work on it. I'm just not going to. That was the other part of it is doing fab work is, you can go down a road for an entire day, say 10 hours, and then you get to the end of that 10-hour day and you're like, shit, literally nothing I did is going to work, and you're going to have to start all over because this isn't going to clear that or whatever. And so that's why I just really despise fab work. People that do it for a living, Jonas Burnett and a couple of other my friends, my goodness, they've got a talent, and more power to them. I do not want to do it for a living.
Well, it's like we know Sam and a couple of other people that have gotten out of fab work because of that exact reason right there. You quote a job at XYZ, at the end of the day, it's been quoted at that, it's charged at that, and then it's like, oh well, yeah, I'm 100 hours into it for.
I think that's
But
the biggest thing is like when you're going to something like that, you can estimate it, but you gotta make sure it's known up front. Like this could
Yeah, and
take
if you're gonna
significantly
be
longer.
like a buggy builder or something, you got to know more than just fabrication. You got to know engine stuff. You got to know, you know,
Yep.
you got to know electrical. You got to know plumbing. Thermodynamics. I mean, all these things. And I know a little bit of everything, and I know enough. I mean, obviously, I built the K30, and I really haven't had any problems other than my right foot. Um, but I just don't. If you're gonna do custom fab work, just do the same thing over and over. Do Coyote 5.0 swaps on Broncos, where you get a recipe and you just do it every single day the same way, and that's how you can make some money doing it. But doing obscure shit where you're gonna do a 5.0 swap one day and then a full tube chassis the next, and then a 7.3 Power Stroke swap the next day, you're never gonna make any money doing it that way.
You're never gonna find somebody who's as if one person might be able to do that stuff and jump between the jobs, but to find help to help you if you do need more people to work on said projects or you have more people who want stuff done, right? Finding help that is equivalent is going to be probably even more difficult than learning to do those skills yourself. Like
Mhm.
just an insane amount
That
of
fabrication job did teach me, I mean, it was taught by my own wallet by, not getting paid, but I
Yeah.
did get access to some pretty cool tools, had a hydraulic tube bender. And so I got to cut my teeth on tube bending, and that's what
Oh,
allowed
that's
me
cool.
to learn, what I do now with the roll cage stuff that I own. And
Mhm.
then, learning how to use, a CNC plasma table. And I own one of those now. And I plan to, once the K30's done, never have to touch them again. I hope they grow massive cobwebs on them.
When it's done.
Yeah, which they were already starting to grow cobwebs until that 14 bolt broke, and I had to dust them off. I was really excited. But
So, you want to talk about the business side of things and like how that all kind of took off? Because it all
mhm.
kind of ties back to the old shitbox second gen, I'm guessing.
Kind of. So I guess we need to back way up. So I went to engineering school at Texas Tech for being a civil, and I switched to mechanical engineering. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life, but my dad just wanted to set me up the best he could for success in life. And I told him whenever I was very young, up until the point I went to college, I wanted to be a mechanic. And he's like, dude, I know plenty of mechanics. You're going to starve to death. And probably 30 years ago that was true, but now the way cars have gotten and how complex they are, I mean, we're $200 an hour as a shop. I mean, we make pretty good money, and you just got people lined out the door. I wish we weren't 7 weeks out, but anyways, here I go off on a tangent. Um,
Feel free.
so anyways, I'm far from starving, but I went to college and I didn't have my heart in it, and so I suffered through 3 years making just bare minimum grades and always going to my buddies' houses and wrenching on their stuff and going rock crawling. That's where I got into rock crawling, was in college, and just always wanting to do that, and that's where my passion was. And so I dropped out of my third year in college. Didn't tell my dad, just packed my shit and left. And that was like the ballsiest thing I'd ever done in my life. My dad pretty well ran my life, told me how to do it, and I was like, wow, like I'm 21 years old, I'm just gonna do what I want. And he tried like hell to talk me back into it, but I just took a minimum wage job at a local mechanic shop working for like, I say minimum wage, it was like $10 an hour. Worked there for a couple years. It was a less than ideal situation. The shop really was stuck in 1980. He cared about the work, but he never invested any money in the shop. And but he taught me how to be like meticulous. And so then I went to work at a Ford dealership, and that's where I met my old boss that owned he ended up opening his own shop, and I went to work for him. And I went from making like $12 an hour as a mechanic, and he's like, I'll pay you 40 an hour. And I was like, holy shit, I'm gonna be rich. Well, then I found out about flag rate, where you get paid, by the hours you produce. And I was just so meticulous. It took me so long. We got the front end guy over there doing ball joints and alignments, making just massive fat checks because he's making 80 hours a week. And I'm over here, I'm their, Swiss Army knife. I'm like the guy that can do engine drivability and rebuild engines and build differentials. And then, oh, let's throw them on this custom fab work stuff. And I was just getting pounded. I made like, on a good week, I'd make a 35-hour week if I'd been there for 50 hours. I'd come in on my days off for free and try and catch up on fab work and stuff. And so I cut my teeth there. I made a fair paycheck, but I had a client base at home. I had a little one bay shop building with a little 10,000 pound car lift, and I'd put that shop up to work on the K30. Well, then naturally, people are like, "Hey, can you do these ball joints for me?" And I'm like, "Sure, dude. I'll do them on the weekend." I made some extra money, and so I had a client base. And then the unfortunate thing happened. It's fortunate for me that it happened, but we had a coworker who's still a good friend of mine, and he a little hot headed. And I had seen him progress from verbal insults to physical insults or physical altercations to the point where one day his helper put a plastic snake in his toolbox. The dude got so pissed off he went and got a gun and started waving it around the shop, saying, "Oh, which one of y'all, pussy?" I don't know if you say that, but anyways, which
Feel
one of
free.
y'all assholes put this snake in my toolbox? I bet you ain't got the balls to say it now. And like, dude, everyone carries. I mean, we live in Texas. There was at least 8 guns on everybody's hip in the shop, and I'm just like, this was just a recipe for disaster. And they did not immediately can him. And the second I started asking questions like, "Hey, what are y'all gonna do with this guy? Like, I like him and all, but he's a basket case at this point. He's got some issues to work out. Whatever. I
That,
don't want to work
that's
here."
scary.
and I got let go for questioning the authority, and so I immediately said, you know what, this is my shot. I'm going to take it, and so I loaded up all my tools, went home to my one base shop with my 1-year-old child and my wife that was in college, and we made shit happen. And here we are. I hired my brother, who's a rocket scientist by all means. He should really not be a mechanic. He should really be working for somewhere making a lot of money doing nothing. But this is what he enjoys too. And then I hired a good friend of mine named Michael, and he's our shop hand. He's my Swiss Army knife. I've taught him. He didn't know how to drive a stick shift when he started work for me, but he knows how to do that now. He didn't know a lot of things, and we just teaching him as we go kind of thing. But he
Yep.
keeps the shop looking just, spectacular, because I hate a dirty shop. And when you're trying to run a business and turn wrenches and do all this stuff, it gets cluttered if you don't have somebody that just specifically picks up around there. And so anyways, that's how we started the shop, and then we started on TikTok, and then here we are with, 175,000 followers on Facebook and 130 on TikTok, and then almost 9,000 on YouTube. And we've had customers from Florida, California, New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Mexico. Um,
Wow.
so kind of all over the place, and get
What's
people
the
constantly from other states asking about having us do their work.
what's the most common thing that rolls through there? Just out of curiosity. I mean, like as far as jobs go.
As much as these things pay my bills, unfortunately, second gen Dodges, they're archaic. I mean, I would much rather work on third gens and fourth gens all day, but second gen, so 94 to '02 seems to be primarily what I work on. I try not to make my brother work on them because he hates them, because they're just oil leaking ass tractor engines. Um, but we do a ton of differential work, a ton of oil leaks, transfer case overhauls. I mean, it's a lot of repetitive stuff, and that's where it's kind of difficult being a content creator, is not just doing the same exact stuff over and over again, because you're going to have a huge, following at first, and they're going to get tired of the same 4 things you do. And so that's where it's like I get a little bit, I don't know, I'm trying to get a little bit more creative with what I put on the channel and not just the same stuff.
Well, that's why we bounce talking between like the 4 normal host and then talking to guest. Is if it's just the 4 normal host, it gets boring. But then we talk to you about doing second gen shit because they're terrible trucks and I fucking love them. And then, you know, we'll talk
I got a
about
guy
building
from
a Toyota next week.
I got a guy from California that's about to join the premier Stratemann Automotive Club, where you spend 30,000 in one hit.
What the fuck is he doing?
Hey, he's probably gonna listen to this, so be nice to him. But a lot is what it comes down to. He just wants
Talking
to just
party
spend it
truck?
once. No, really just a lot of second gen maintenance, like a front end rebuild on one of those things. By the time you do ball joints and axle shafts and a nice synergy steering kit and track bar and all this stuff that goes along with it, it's 5,000 every day, all day. And we're doing a complete AC system on that truck with a new dash and everything. That's like another 9,000. I mean, it's just it adds up so freaking fast. And I feel, I don't want to say bad for people. It's their own money. They can spend it how they want, but it does add up so quickly. And it's like, man, does that really make sense to spend that kind of money on an old second gen? But do these brand new trucks,
You look at what's out there. I'd rather spend the money on the second
dude,
gen.
these new, common rails, sorry, common rails. These new 6.7 Cummins having, 18 plus motors, having all these lifter failures with 30,000 miles, 50,000 miles. It's just insane. Who wants to buy a truck and have that problem, that big of a problem that early on? I just read a post the other day. Dude had like 70,000 miles, and it's been to the dealer 3 different times, and every time they put a new set of lifters and cam in it. It's like, that's insane. You know. Um,
Yeah, that's
Hopefully that's
and
absolutely
good for anything.
fuel systems on Power Stroke, those are like 13,000 all day long. We got these new Power Strokes. They leak oil from everywhere, and you can't pull the oil pan in the truck. So guess what? We got to pick the cab up, pull the motor out, put it on stand, and you get to do that every 100,000 miles. Yay!
Yeah, fuck that. That's
Yeah, it's
The
I don't know.
the new trucks are designed with these frequent like almost failure points just to keep up revenue. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
I think they really want us to get into a point where it's just like a constant recycling, a revolving door of purchasing a new one to keep from having to
Yeah.
pay a shit ton of money to fix the older one that you have. But I have
Well,
seen a huge
everyone wins
spike
on
in
that.
people wanting to fix their older trucks these days, as opposed to spending six figures on a new one that they know is going to break.
Well, that's exactly what it comes down to. Is it's like, all right, cool. I want to go spec out a boring, almost work truck, 2,500. Cool, great. I'm gonna spend 95,000. Awesome.
Hmm
I'm gonna drive it for 3 years. It's gonna have some significant failures. It's probably gonna go back to the dealer. And then I'm gonna end up wanting to turn around and sell it because the thing's been a piece of shit. And it's like, all right, well, my old shit box is my old shit box. But when it fucks up, oh no, it blew up. All right, cool. I'm gonna go buy another motor for
hmm
$2,000 if it's really that bad of a fuck up. But it's also an old Cummins, so like the biggest issue I think is the electrical on the second gens.
Yeah, finding a good place to source, computers for the 24 valves is one of the bigger problems that we have.
Is
Um,
it better at this point to just go mechanical on a 24 valve?
I have mixed opinions on that. Um,
All right, well,
yes, ideally on paper, yes, putting a P pump on there is, the end all be all. But they have some caveats for sure.
what kind of caveats out of curiosity?
Mainly the fuel lines that go from the injection pump to the engine leaking. You got to like over tighten the absolute dog shit out of them. And everybody that owns a P pump 24 valve has to keep spare lines in their freaking toolbox. Um, and
Never hear
that was
about
just
that. Never hear
yeah,
about
that
that.
was I will say that a friend of mine named Justin Sellers, I finally broke down, reached out to him, and I was like, dude, what the hell is going wrong here? So my helper bought a 99 24 valve, and I was like, oh, dude, we got P pump swap this thing. Screw that VP, junk. So we P pump swapped it. And from day one, the freaking lines leaked. I mean, it had brand new delivery valves on the pump. It had brand new connector tubes in the head, and it just would not stop leaking, like to the point it's like dripping off the oil pan, like massive leaks. And so he drove it like that for a while, and we warranty, not warranty, but we'd buy new lines and replace them, kind of the worst ones. And we were just coming up with all these crazy theories, and it ended up being just that we had bought the stainless steel lines and not the mild steel ones, because the stainless ones you don't have to worry about them rusting, and it was only an extra $40. Well, the stainless is so hard that it doesn't seat properly
Yeah.
into
It
the
doesn't
delivery
squish.
valve.
There's no
Interesting.
Yeah.
squish.
So we put the
Huh.
mild steel ones on there, and I wouldn't say it's 100% solved, but it's way better. It's like 95% better. So definitely, if you ever decide to do that, mild steel lines.
They gotta get
It's
they
something
get
that's
some
been
NICOP lines.
I don't
And then
think
the
that's
first
like
thing that
the
happened to him was the pump. The rack hung in the pump. He took some 500,000 mile 12 valve pump, put it on there, and it made it 1,000 miles, and the dang rack stuck. So his RPM was like stuck at 3,000. That was cool.
Yeah, that sounds super fun.
Yeah.
Makes me really want to spend how much does it cost to do one of those swaps anyways? Not exactly the cheapest.
I haven't done one for money ever, so I don't know what it costs. It's always
Yeah.
if
just
you
been like
go
a
and
friend of mine.
if you go buy the thoroughbred kit, it's like 3,500.
It sounds like a lot of money to have to deal with leaky lines. I don't know.
Yeah.
How
I don't
often
know.
does a
I've
VP
only
go bad? Like
Yeah,
if
exactly. I mean,
you
some people get a 500,000 miles out of them, and then some people get 20,000 miles out of them. I
yeah.
had one. It's because there's a lot of reman pumps out there. I mean, they're all remans at this point. And
Yep.
I had one where fired it up, truck was idling for 20 minutes and died in the bay, and it VP was dead. I was like, God dang! So now we gotta go
Jesus
buy another
Christ.
pump, put it on there. It's just
Yeah.
uh. So blue chip VP sells the best of the best, but it's a very expensive pump.
Yep.
All right, well, I'm gonna pull up Google now.
um man, I had a question about something and we were talking about 20 or P pumps and now I don't remember what it was.
I actually experienced what they call head gasket flutter for the first time in my life today.
What the hell is what
We
is
have
that?
not
Head
something you
gasket
want.
flutter?
Yeah.
How
So
does that shouldn't there should be no flutter.
yeah, it's not an ideal situation. So it's a 6.7 Cummins with compound turbos, and it's still got the factory VGT turbos, so it brings the power in really quickly. And at low RPM with compounds, you make a lot of power, and it can shoot the rods outside the block. It can make them shorter. It can lift the head, which is what happened in this scenario. And it lifted the head. I mean, this was already a problem when it came to us. It came to us to get diagnosed for an overheating problem, but it sounded like the downpipe was rubbing the floorboard. It was like a really loud banging sound, but it was the head lifting under power and that head gasket fluttering, and it's shooting combustion gas that's so hot out the back. It's probably shooting fireballs out the back of the cylinder head, and it actually burned the fiberglass insulation behind the engine, which is like 3 inches behind the cylinder head. So I mean, it was shooting some freaking flame out of that thing to burn the firewall insulation. But yeah, well, I mean, we found the problem. It needs a head gasket.
And then, maybe some studs or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's already got ARP 2000s, but
Tighten
you
them a
need
little
the
more. I don't know.
625s. You need the
Yeah.
625s when doing those. But
That's a lot of fucking head stud there.
yeah, I put them in my rock crawler just because it sits outside enough. I didn't want to do like my ARP 2000s got rust, and rust can lead to the stud fracturing. So I put 2000s or I put 625s in a truck that makes 500 horsepower. That is overkill. And we did a build for a kid. I went to a dyno event, and there was at the time he was 14 years old, and they almost didn't want to let him run because they were like, "Did this kid steal his like grandpa's truck and come like try and dyno this thing?" And the grandfather was there with him, and they were like, "No, he's here with me." And so they let him dyno this completely stock 6-speed 24 valve. And just seeing this kid roll through roll the gears and just smiling ear to ear, and it made like 160 wheel horsepower. Is an absolute turd. And I was just like, man, the hardest thing for me whenever I was a kid was affording anything, because my dad wouldn't let me get a job, and he didn't really give me any money to spend. So I just had to like sell scrap metal to make $100 to buy some, hooker headers or something off the swap meet page. And so I was like, you know what? Like, I'm going to buy this kid an S&B air intake and drop ship it to him. And I just made a little post on I think my personal Facebook page, because we didn't have a big business page back then. And a bunch of people were like, "Oh, I want part of this." And so we ended up doing a build on this kid's truck, and he helped. We did clutch, we did exhaust, 625 ARP head studs somebody donated, valve springs, injectors, tuning from a Quadzilla 4000 RPM box with custom tuning by TJ Frey. We did all this stuff. I think he made a second dyno pull now, and it's like in the mid 400s, like 450 horsepower now. Way more power than a 16-year-old kid needs, but his mom has the ability to turn it down if she wants. So, she can make it if he doesn't, clean his room, she can set it on the 150 horse tune.
Only 150
But
horse, dude.
but well, yeah, but yeah, so that was pretty cool. That I just kind of kickstarted that kid's build, and it was cool being a part of it. We pulled a solid 2 whole days with like 6 guys working on this truck all day. I think we put 2 12-hour days into it and finally got it done for him. Got traction bars, and we ended up and then it had an open diff, and so he was like, just burning the tires off this thing. And so I was like, dude, he went to the track. He started going to these big diesel events and like dyno in his truck, and like, he's just having a time of his life. And he would try and make a pass at the track, and he's just spinning first gear, spinning second gear, spinning third gear. And I was like, dude, I got a wore out old track lock. We'll put some clutches in there and throw it in there. And so he brings it by. I did a video on this, and it actually got demonetized on TikTok because the unsafe activities in which we performed after we put the limited slip in there. But we put the limited slip in there, and then we put new clutches in it and all that. And I was like, "Can you do a burnout? Like, I need a video of the burnout, a before and after kind of thing." He's like, "Yeah, I can do a burnout." And he goes out there and he just dumps the clutch, and I'm like, "Holy shit, this thing is gonna break the input shaft of the transmission," you know. And I was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Normally it just starts breaking the tire loose," and I'm like, "Oh crap, I didn't even think about that." And so I had to show him how to like. You gotta like build some boost in third gear, and like you gotta be serious about it. You gotta not sidestep the clutch, but you gotta be building some boost and then just let into it, And So I showed him how to do that, and I recorded him doing a burnout into the ditch sideways because he wasn't used to it, spinning both the tires. I'm like, oh no, this kid's gonna roll his truck, because it's because I wanted to put a limited slip in it for him.
Yep.
Oh man, that was
Oh.
awesome. But
See,
yeah, he's got a little learning to
that's
do
the
in that
kind of
front.
bad influence we need.
Yeah, yeah. So it was an enjoyable experience, and he got a lot of enjoyment out of it. So
That's sweet. um, what is your? I guess the kid has six-speed truck, right? What's your? I just finished doing a 6-speed swap in mine. I bought a truck with 600,000 miles on it unknowingly for the
Ooh.
transmission.
Nice.
So not the greatest investment, but it all worked out. I went through the whole thing, put a bunch of new parts in. It needed input shaft, main shaft. And main shaft was my fault, but input shaft was all messed up. 6 gear, reverse gear, all new bearings, a bunch of just little parts, all the synchros and like the
Is this 5600?
yeah, 5600.
Yeah.
All the typical things that you do in a transmission rebuild, anyways. And it definitely was a learning curve. I come from AX15s and an NV45 and not a dual disc, and it definitely was a little bit. It's definitely a different
Yeah,
transmission.
bravo. Props to you for doing that. I haven't ever built a 5600. I attempted to do a 4500 probably 10 years ago and got my ass so kicked that I just swore I would never try and rebuild a manual transmission again. And I probably just need to quit being a girl. Now that I have certain information, it literally tells me step by step how to do it. But
yeah,
we've come to a point where like you can't get good quality parts anymore for like those transmissions. Like
Yep.
on the MV 4500s, they have the 5th gear clutch cone, which has these 10 little chicken shit splines that put all the power of the engine through those 10 splines.
Yep.
And I had 3 transmissions back to back that I had built by our builder, and all 3 of them stripped those 10 splines out within the first 100 miles. And so I'm like doing all this warranty work, and then a friend of mine owns Super Stick transmissions, and he's having like people, just completely blow apart like the 6th gear in their 5600s and stuff like that. And I'm just like, I don't want any part of that. Like, if people can't drive, like, why do I want to build their transmission? I make enough money and have enough work as it is that I'll just like sub that out to somebody else. I really don't want any part of it. If my personal transmission blows up, I'll probably try and take a stab at rebuilding it again. But I don't know that I want to do it for money.
No, I don't know if it's. Yeah, I mean, as a business, definitely not. I don't know. Unless you're doing a ton of them, I don't see
Yeah.
how you can make a decent enough profit to actually make it worthwhile.
I think somebody was about to ask me what my favorite transmission was on the 6 speeds, maybe. But even if you didn't, the G56 is way superior in my opinion.
Yeah, well, you're talking to a bunch of NV5600
Yeah,
plebs,
Luke
so-
has one too.
Yeah, I 5600 swapped my 2nd gen that I am currently common rail swapping, and I hate it. It's so slow, and I get in a G56 truck, and like you can just effortlessly bang gears, not even trying to shift fast. Like a 5600, you want to shift fast, you're gonna have to like mean it. You're gonna have to like yank it. And a G56 just shifts like butter all the time, every time. It's like you're driving a Ferrari, but it's a 1-ton truck.
I don't. I'm just used to the 5600.
Yeah, don't ever drive a G56. You'll never want to
So
drive your 5600.
I went from so I've had the truck that I just put the transmission in. I had down for about 6 months because I had a bunch of cab work, rust repair that needed to be done, some engine bay crap, and I got laid off in between all of it too. So it was just this giant mess of a project. And in between, I was driving. I've got an '87 J20 on 40s and an NV 4500, and that's what I was driving. And that thing, the motors, I rebuilt it, but it's still collapsed. I just put bare minimum into it. The transmission it wasn't a rock crawler, so it's a little loose. It's been rebuilt allegedly. all this other stuff. It's just pretty good, but it's loose, and the motor's loose, and the tires are massive, and it's just kind of leaf springs with bushings that haven't been changed in God knows how long. Like the thing is just fast, or I don't want to say fast because everyone gets mad at me when I say that it's fast. It's not fast. It's sloppy and loose and just sort of all over the place. And to go from that, which like you can kind of like put it in whatever the fuck gear you wanted to, it didn't care. It had it's got something in the axles, and the transmission's geared pretty low, so you really have to wind it out to get it to do anything. To go from that, which was like just you can put it in whatever gear you want and it'll be fine because the axle ratio is so high that it just doesn't really care. To go to the 5600 and the Cummins with 410s in the axles, where you have like I don't know, the window of shifting on that transmission with that axle set, and I'm sure it's probably not far off for the 355. Was just it fucked with me for a solid week before I was shifting where I needed
How
to
many
be.
times you hit reverse while going highway speeds?
Not only once. Only once did I try to put it in reverse at on highway speeds.
Yeah.
I've
It's
I
only
figured
whenever you're
that
trying
one
to
out.
race somebody.
Yeah,
You
that
go to
sounds
grab
about right.
fifth, and it's like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did money shift from downshifting from fifth to fourth, put it in second. That was cool. It was raining, so I just the back just locked up and was going too slow and fishtailed a little bit. But
yeah, a
that
friend of
was
mine we built a Common Rail 5.9. It's a single cab four-wheel drive on 35s, and I was driving that thing. It makes 750 wheel horsepower, and but it was a dog with the 6-speed. We 48 RE swapped it. Now it actually makes like you can just stand it in at 90 and it'll break the tires loose, and it's actually fun to drive. But anyway, so it has a 364 and a 475 if I remember right. And so you don't ever actually hit the 475 until you're in fifth gear or something like that. And so there was some little car like messing with me, and we just happened to come up to the light at the same time. I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna dust him," and thankfully I didn't yank it into full driver. It would have been an absolute shit show. But so I spin through first, second, third, and like it's just barely getting into the power on that little 364. And I hit fourth, and then you hit fifth, and that's when you really start pulling on that big turbo. And so I'm like pulling up on the guy, I'm like, okay, I'm finally getting into some power here. And then I hit fourth and like started chirping the tires. Like, money shifted it, and I was like, oh no, I'm just embarrassed. I was gonna pull over now. Yeah. So
oh, yeah, it's no, it's definitely a little different than I don't know. I think it's just the RPM range, and then yeah, I mean the slow shifting. If you try to like rush that thing, and it gets worse for yourself. You really
yeah,
just have
it's
to
really
let it
just
do what
like
it
a
wants to do.
Yeah, in the fourth, fifth shift, I find particularly annoying on the 4500. You kind of have to like just give it its time, go carefully or nicely Z it over and make sure that you're like latching into the right gate. Otherwise, it
Mhm.
wants to just throw it at reverse, and I'm like, please.
I've never had
No.
that. I don't. Mine is now that like I'm not overcompensating for fifth. Like I don't think I'd ever go into reverse. I actually like will sometimes try to put it in reverse and find that it's oh, this is sixth. That's why I'm not going anywhere. But yeah, I don't know. It's the 4.5 isn't great.
I
That's like
don't
the
like
other
the
ones all
4.5.
kind of do what they should, but I think it's because it's trying to pull it center. At least if you have good detents in that thing, right? It wants to be centered. So if I don't know, I always have to like give it a little bit and then it's fine. But I did notice too, like with the rebuild, and I don't know if it was like the breaking in the dual disc or whatever else, but I think it was that and probably synchros as well, sort of at the same time, like breaking all that stuff in. It went from shifting like honestly, I was questioning my life choices as to whether this was what I actually wanted to do with this truck. To now it drives pretty smooth at this point, but definitely
yeah, the
needed
dual
a
disc
little
having
break
to
in.
slow down a lot more mass than a single disc, so it's definitely gonna shift slower.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely is better
Do you have
now
a
than it
south bend
was.
or?
Vire.
Oh, good,
Yeah.
good.
I've got
Yep, the quiet, which is very quiet. I
loud.
was surprised.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and my loud one is fucking obnoxious.
Yeah, I barely hear mine.
Yeah, no, the loud ones are obnoxious when you push in the clutch, but it's way better in a South Bend.
So I bought this truck off of a friend of mine. It lived out in Idaho, and the guy that had the truck before him decided that they were going to put the Viair, I think it's like their 700 horsepower clutch, into a stock second gen.
Mhm.
And it's just fucking loud. Like,
Yeah,
other
if
than
it's
that,
not the
though,
quiet version, it's got a free floating disc that's like 5/8 of an inch thick or something, and so yeah, whenever you push in the
thick.
clutch, it's going to be extremely loud.
Yes, it is. And then the pedal engagement's like right at the top of the fucking pedal, so
Yeah,
it's
that's the
really
only
weird.
complaint I have about Bel Air. Is that
Okay, so
it's pretty common for that. They're not all the same. I don't know really what I don't know what causes it. I'm not a clutch builder. I haven't really dissected one. But yeah, the South Bends seem to grab like a lot sooner, and so like it feels more like a traditional clutch than a Bel Air just kind of releases at the very top. You know, you're like 90% off the pedal, and then you got that last 10% to feather off of it, you know. But I still put them in everything because they're better than the South Bends by a long shot.
uh, just out of curiosity, because like my dad was into diesels back in like 2012 and 2008, that like vintage, and South Bend was the go-to at that point in time. What makes the Viers like better? I've got one in my truck. I don't have a dog really in this race. It's what showed up in it. So
It's the amount of pieces that can fly out of a South Bend and put holes in your bell housing for air to flow through. I suppose that really sucks about them. If you like speed holes, they're your go-to. So the South Bend hasn't updated their clutch design since like their conception, to my knowledge, and so the floater plate has these big, like half-inch dowels that it sits on, and there's four of them. Well, just like the killer dowel pin, those can fall out, and then now they become a projectile to punch holes in things. Not cool. The floater plate also, like, if you know what a floater plate looks like, you know that little, it's like a cross, and there's that piece that engages the flywheel is probably 2 inches deep by 3 inches wide, and there's four of those pads. Well, those entire pads can break off, and then now you've got a massive projectile in there. On the discs themselves, they come with like rubber isolators instead of springs for the clutch discs, and those have fallen apart within 10,000 miles. I pulled out a brand new looking South Bend to do a rear main seal on a customer's truck, and all those were gone. So you're talking about the clutch having like just a shit ton of slack side to side, and it never really causes any drivability problems, but it's not right, you know. And so you can
yeah.
call South Bend and specifically order one that doesn't have those little rubber dampers and it has springs. But I just choose to buy from a company that doesn't have. Mainly the hole punching routine is not cool, so I'll deal
No,
with
I'll
the
skip
clutch
the
pedal
whole
and trade it out for the
routine.
hole punch.
Are
Um,
there single disc better? Because like those used to be cool. My aunt had one in her 7.3 for fucking 300,000
uh,
miles.
I pulled out one of their single discs the other day where the springs had become projectiles. And that apparently is a super common problem on, I believe it was a 7.3 as well. Maybe not. I
That's
believe it
just
was though. Um,
that's odd. Because her
and the
truck
clutch really still
never
had a
had an
lot of life. The clutch had a ton of life left in it, but the springs, the spring didn't fail, like the spring enclosure failed. And so all these springs came flying out and into the bell housing and then caused all kinds of havoc. Um,
I would imagine.
And then the other
Also,
thing about South Bend is typically their pedal is pretty stiff compared to a Bel Air. Feels much more
yeah.
like a stock clutch. Like you can have a dual disc Bel Air and it'll feel like a stock single disc. And that's what I really like about them is you don't know you have a performance clutch.
Yeah, mine doesn't feel. I mean, I don't have a reference for what it should feel like in that truck, but it
Hmm.
doesn't feel like I'm pushing much harder than it is, in the Cherokee or the J20 or anything else I drive. So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
Graham,
it seems okay.
mine's way different than that. Mine's like if you get in the Cherokee after driving the Cummins, you just slam the Cherokee straight to the floor.
I don't even need to
Yeah,
push
well,
the
that
clutch
Cherokee's
in.
got like a 7-inch diameter clutch.
Yeah,
Like they're tiny.
it's
That's
a little
Yeah.
yeah, it's
baby
like an
clutch.
8.5.
Yeah,
Uh,
they're pretty small.
Yeah,
So I could see that happening.
yeah. I
It's
haven't driven
But
the
I've
Cherokee in a
driven
minute.
some South Bends that, in my wife's truck, it had a dual disc South Bend for a few years, and my gosh, I think my left leg was stronger than my right by the time we got rid of that junk.
so my
Uh,
aunt, hers was the one side was composite, one side was steel, single disc for a 7.3, and that's what I
Well,
drove
you better
stick on
tell her to
for
get
the
it
time.
changed because it's gonna blow up. That's what it
She's
says.
dead.
Yep, doom
It's
and
not
gloom.
really her problem. Uh,
You better tell
so
Pappy to change his clutch too because it's coming out.
he's also dead. The truck's been sold. I don't know where it is. It's somewhere in Colorado at this point. I'm really
Oh.
kind of sad about that because it was sentimental. Um,
You'll be fine.
but yeah, I will.
You have a perfectly good second gen at home.
I have a perfectly good second gen at home. It's terrible and I love it.
Mm.
Um, One thing I forgot to mention on the 14 bolts, and I don't really want to throw anybody under the bus because these things seem to work for some people, but do not ever do the pinion bearing deletes that are made out of a bronze colored looking material. I don't want to throw the company under the bus, but anyways, I did their pinion bearing bushings and they immediately grabbed onto the pinion and spun in the housing, and I had red line like shockproof gear oil in there. We didn't drive it fast. All I did on the rear, it spun after the dyno hit, and I can understand that because we did like a couple pulls from 0 to like 100, so I was like, man, that one's kind of suspect. So whenever it spun, I was like, maybe I did that to myself. But then on the front axle, it only had a couple of like 4 high pulls in the front yard, like normal trail shit, and it spun in the housing and egged the housing, like pretty much destroyed my brand new 25,000 axles. So don't ever do those pieces of shit.
Ugh.
So now the pinion bearings are held in with green Loctite, and we did the roller modification where like you take the cage out and you add like 3 extra rollers. Um, I'm not sure how I feel about it, but a bunch of people that are running really high horsepower rigs claim that it works amazing for them. But it's weird because, like, normally when you have a roller bearing that doesn't have a cage, like all the rollers stack perfectly right against each other, where like they only have enough room for like oil. Um, and whenever you can't stack that many in there, so you have an entire width of one of those roller bearings missing, and so that width of is just kind of rolling around wherever it
Rolls with-
pleases. Yeah,
That
but
is kind of scary sounding,
it's
but
kind of scary for sure. So
if it works, it works.
my buddy that we're putting these axles in his CJ, I don't know. Anyways, it makes like a fire breathing 300 crankshaft horsepower. So we're just gonna put stock bearings back in there for him.
Yeah,
That way he doesn't have to worry about it.
that makes sense. With the oil
That
impregnated bronze stuff though, that kind of makes sense from like the tool and die perspective because they're doing what?
Well, they claim it's not oil impregnated bronze. They tried that and it was just too soft or something like that. So the company claims that they have some proprietary bushing material they found that works amazing, and
They
it
do.
did not work amazing for me. So just putting it out
No.
there. My 2 cents was it was complete waste of money and fucked my housing. So that was
So
awesome. That was kind
my
of the straw that broke the camel's back for me. When I saw those spun, I was like, I'm not gonna waste any more time. I'm done with it.
In a different class with that thing, if they're saying that that's supposed to work and it just instantly fails, that's crazy. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't know. The bronze bushing in a spot like you got to think that's got to have. There's a lot of movement on a bushing that's just straight metal, and you're relying on maybe fluid getting to it.
Yeah,
You know,
that's the problem with those systems. Everything industrial that's running like a bronze bushing under an extreme load, normally like speaking from press side things, but they all have direct oil feed lines. They don't end up running with just like a hope and a prayer that they're
Flash.
getting
Yeah.
oil.
yeah. I think if it's something you can grease every like 5,000 miles, you could probably make it out of bronze. But otherwise, like, I
And we
don't
did
know.
use 620 retention compound on those when we installed them as well. And they still spun extremely freely on the pinion. They didn't gall the pinion. They didn't, I mean, the end of the pinion was black. It got hot. Um, but I guess the heat expanded and then it grabbed that bronze or whatever. I'm going to call it bronze because that's the color it looks like, but it's
Yeah.
not. It grabbed that bushing and then it spun it in the cast iron housing. And then it, the gears try and deflect. And so now it's burning up just that one particular side, and so it kind of ovaled the housing. So yeah, that was really lame.
Yeah,
Fuck that.
that doesn't sound
And
great.
then something else that was super duper lame was AAM. So they're the ones that manufactured. I had 4-inch ribbed housings in my rig, and oh, what the hell was that? I don't even remember. It's not important. But I had somebody else build the front axle, and it was a genuine AAM 14 bolt center section, and then the rear was also a genuine AAM, and I bought it from Busted Knuckle. And whenever it came in, the side adjusters had about 50% the thread engagement as the front axle, and I was like, how the hell did this happen? Like, why? The side adjusters are already known for blowing out of the housing under high horsepower applications, so why in the hell did I get a housing that has 4 threads where my front housing has 8? And so I initially thought it was Busted Knuckles' problem, but AAM redesigned that housing in 2023, and I happened to buy my housing in 2024. So lame AF. So if you're buying 4-inch housings, make sure you don't buy that piece of shit. It never caused me any grief, but I also never got to beat the shit out of it either. So it was pretty upsetting to see that, but it's just, I guess, par for the course nowadays. But I would never build another 14 bolt ever.
So is it just Axle Techs and everything now? Just straight to Axle Tech?
Well,
What are your opinions on 9 inches? You get a lot of people talking a lot of. I mean, obviously, it's like that's a different. It wouldn't go in your
yeah.
stretch limo there, but
I mean, I don't have a huge opinion on them. They seem to work really well in the light tube chassis that are 2-seat rigs that weigh 4,000 pounds. They do really well in them.
yeah,
Especially like the high nines and stuff. Those are pretty cool, but I would never be able to run something like that. Somebody suggested I look into those 10-inch, third member 9-inch kind of things, those Gearworks ones.
Yep.
And they really weren't out of my budget range, but people were still exploding those with much less power than I have. And I was like, nope, not doing that.
yeah,
The Axle Tech thing is like, I shot for something that people have bigger tires, way more, drive more ridiculous than I do, and have more power. And they seem to have a good success with them. These people are on big ass tractor tires. I don't plan on running anything bigger than a 47-inch sticky bogger, and they weigh at least 1,000 pounds more than me on most days, and they drive way harder than I do. I mean, that Havoc racing is something I might do once in my life, but those people are nuts. It's awesome. I love watching it, but they're nuts. And I might have been right there with them if my 14 bolt ring and pinions hadn't shit the bed.
Which is just a weird sentence.
But
Still,
I might have been my own worst enemy doing the heat treating.
possibly, but even then, that's still a lot. And the fact that it's eaten up the bronze bearing kind of doesn't surprise me with the application. I feel like there's a time and a place to put a bronze or a brass bushing in, and I don't really know if that was the right location for it.
So of all the ring and pinion failures of the 14 bolts, the first one was the only one that I knew when it broke. And we were in the qualifier, and so I was trying not to beat the snot out of the rig because like we just needed to make it through because there was enough rigs that broke that oh well, I take that back. At this point in the rate. So at the Insanity Fab Winter Challenge, just imagine this. You just spent 3 months putting this rig together all day, every day. You spent God knows how much money getting to where you're at, and all this time, and all these people that helped you get to where you're at. And we get to the qualifier, and the freaking fans fail on the first lap. And I'm like, okay, that sucks. But guess what? These fans have a bypass built in, and I tested it at the shop. I bypassed that thing. Fans still don't work. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, we just drove all this way to make it one lap, and then not because if you don't make the qualifier, you don't make the race. And we had to place in the qualifiers like 10 cars, and we had to get in the first like top 7 or something like that. And so like the stress is on, like it's just an immense amount of stress to get this rig back on the trail. And I ended up calling Lori Webster, which is the guy that sold me the radiator and fan setup, and he was like, okay, well, if that bypass didn't work, there's another fail-safe way. And we ended up having to like strip the wires off the fans and tie them to each other, and they worked. And I was like, hallelujah. So we get back in this thing, and I mean, those fans are just on full blast. I didn't care. I was like, coolant temp's back where it needs to be, and we are just booking it through the woods. And they've got like a couple of rock courses, and then they have a fast course where you come out of the woods and you go down this hill, and then there's like a ravine at the bottom, and it's not like really deep or anything, but I guess they had some rainfall, and so there was like a bit of a trench at the bottom, and I didn't realize that was there. And so I come out of the woodwork just wide open, just pedal to the floor, 60 pounds of boost, and I see that ravine, and I'm like, if I let up now and plant the brakes, we are going to go end over end. So I'm like, I'm just going to floor it through the ravine. And when the rear hit, I heard something and I felt something go crunch, and then every time the tire came around, I started hearing that crunching sound, and so we just kept driving it. I thought for sure I broke the 205. I mean, it was that violent, and but it was in snow, in mud, on a 47-inch sticky LTB, which is supposedly not a very good tire. And I just don't. I guess the shock load from hitting that. I don't know. I don't know what broke it, but yeah, we had that thing to the floor, and when it smacked that ravine, that's when it broke that ring and pinion. And we were already moving. I mean, we were probably going 35, 40 miles an hour. And but the tires might have been going faster. That might have been what did it. Is the tires were actually just because we're in the snow with no traction, making 60 pounds of boost in third gear, four high. So it was probably doing 70-mile-an-hour wheel spin, and you're only going 35. And so when you hit the ravine and it catches traction, that's probably actually what broke it. So, but I
Just
can without a
no
doubt,
remorse.
say that if you buy 300M Branick 40 spline shafts for the front and 300M 40 spline Mark Williams rear shafts, you'll never ever break them because the ring and pinions are the weak link. And whenever I built 14 bolts, I told everybody, I was like, man, I want the 14 bolt ring and pinion to be the weak link in my rig. Like, if you break a 14 bolt ring and pinion, you're somebody. And here I broke four of them, and I'm like, these things suck. Oh man, I got what I wished
Drive
for, and
shafts
it
would have been
sucked.
easier. Maybe just put them
Yeah,
back at 1310s.
yeah, golly. So, yep, that's the story of my fun with that turd. Just disappointment after disappointment. It does run good though. It really is a lot of power for what it needs. Way more than it needs. But I like to drive like a rock bouncer, so we'll see once I get some axles that'll hold up to the abyss what it really will do.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see. I'm excited to see how it all kind of packages up with the axle techs because of how big they are.
Yeah, the cool thing is you don't have to trust them because they are just so massive. The housings being 7/8 of an inch thick, they come out of a 9-ton military vehicle. I don't know that. I'm sure that somebody out there has done it, but I don't think, to my knowledge, I've seen anybody say they've bent a housing. And there's a lot of people running these things, so pretty excited about that.
Yep. Dana 60s are looking mighty small at that point.
Yeah, my inch and a quarter Heims are gonna look like toothpicks. I got 2.5-inch lowers from Busted Knuckle and bent them on the first ride. So I'm gonna have to figure out something else for lower links now.
Aluminums or steel?
I don't know. They sell 3-inch aluminum. Might try those, but I don't know that that's gonna be enough. I mean, the
Yeah.
guys that are running the axle techs are like running like 3-inch DOM, like that's half wall or something, sleeved with
Yeah.
another piece of half wall DOM. I mean,
So it's just
gosh.
basically like a solid chunk of fucking.
Yeah, so
Wow.
but two pieces of DOM slid together is stronger than a piece of solid stock.
Yeah.
Don't ask the engineering behind it, but it is. But then other people will sleeve DOM with aluminum, and so I might have to go that route. I just do not know.
Yeah, I've heard of that. I hadn't heard of. I mean, I knew it was something you could do. I didn't realize there was some, engineering that says that it's stronger. That's
Yeah.
interesting. But yeah, either of those, it's a good starting point, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Uh, it's a battle. Some days I wonder if it's worth it. Putting all this effort in and
Some
getting.
it's for science. Somebody's got to do it.
Yeah,
So
it definitely gets daunting at
talk
times.
about it and post it on social media. I feel like the people who do, who may already know, clearly nobody else knows because they didn't say anything. So somebody's got to do it.
And since I use since I have such a social media following, and I do post videos like building the K30, driving it, abusing it, stuff like that,
Yeah.
I consider it a write off. So 100% of what I stick in that thing is business advertisement.
Mm,
So the IRS probably
100%.
got to automate whenever I spend $100,000 in 1 year on advertising, but I'll show them the
I
cool
mean,
videos. I'll show them the revenue. I made $30 on that video. You know, I had to
yep,
claim
hey,
that
it's
on my
worth it.
income tax.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody said they had to be smart advertising. The return on investment is probably pretty low, but
I feel like
here we are.
advertising is like probably the most lenient like area of a business to spend
I hit
money,
up
right?
all the
Like,
other diesel shops, and they all said that they write off their, race trucks and stuff. And I mean, these are some serious people that
yeah,
have 1,500 horse drag trucks and stuff. They're not a small program,
no, you
and
kind of
and
have
they,
to. Like, I don't know. That's as a business, that's how you. I mean,
There's a lot
maybe
of
not for
money
you.
going
You
into
don't. You're advertising a buggy when you already told us you don't like doing custom fabrication work unless it's like
yeah,
a thing. So maybe a stretch, but it's still
yeah,
cool. Like it gets
yeah.
the name of the
Well, it's
shop
got
out
the
there.
Cummins motor in there, and that's primarily what I
Yeah,
work
we
on.
work
And
on
it
those.
doesn't blow up, so I must know what I'm doing.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
It blew up
Yeah.
14 bolts, but it didn't blow up.
Dodges don't
But
have
that
those.
motor,
So,
that motor that's in that K30 was a bone stock 75,000 mile VE pump motor. So it came non-intercooled. I mean, it was a turd. 150 horsepower truck, or 140, I think, is what they advertised them at. And I got that thing so hot. I took it to Cletus and Cars. I don't know if y'all know. Surely, if y'all don't live under a rock, you know who Cletus
yes.
McFarland is.
Yeah.
Yep.
I took it to Cletus and Cars, and I did a four-wheel drive donut in it several times. And the EGTs, I mean, the whole time I was out there, EGT gauge was just pegged at 1600. And the pistons got so hot that they swolled in the bore and locked the motor up to where it wouldn't, like, it died with my foot wide open on the throttle. And I thought, well, that was the end of that motor. I'm gonna have to rebuild it. And we towed it back to the trailer because, like, I hit the starter and it just like ka-ching, ka-ching. Like, I mean, it was like done. And towed it back to the trailer. Went and watched the burnout competition. I'm like, man, how in the hell we gonna get this thing on the trailer? I was like, I'm gonna try and start it. And that motor cooled off and it fired right back up. And I was like, son of a gun. And then I did it again on a trail one time. It was muddy and I had bald 42-inch super swampers. And I was just having to beat the ever living shit out of this thing, trying to get up a trail in the rain. And it got hot enough where it locked up again. And so we pulled that motor out before Insanity Fab to just kind of see how bad it was. And I pulled the cylinder head and I was impressed. Like, the vertical scoring in the cylinders was not that bad. There was no melted pistons. I mean, you got all these people that are so worried about EGTs. Oh, 1300 is insane. And I'm like, I'm holding my shit over here at 1600 plus. And it finally locked the motor up and the edges of the pistons are still sharp. I mean, just, it's crazy.
Number.
And
Just a number on a gauge.
it's just a
Nobody told
number.
you that.
Yeah. And um where was I going with this? Oh, so yeah, we pulled the motor down and I was like, man, we're just gonna refresh it for the new build because I don't want to put it in and then the motor's hurt and it's got too much blow by and it's puking oil or whatever. So we decided to throw it on the engine stand and like dingleberry hone it, and the pistons were scored pretty bad. We actually just did a giveaway for the pistons. That's really the worst of it, was the pistons had like really bad drag marks in them. And so we gave all the pistons away. And but I took pistons out of a 400,000 mile 12 valve that still looked brand new. And this motor had a nasty ridge at the top of the cylinders. I mean, this thing was just wore smooth out. And I took these pistons and I measured my piston to wall clearance, and my cylinders on this motor were egg shaped. Like, you turn it 90 degrees, like where the wrist pin was, and I only had 3 thousandths piston to wall clearance, which is not enough. And then you turn it 90 degrees to the skirt side, and I had like 7 thousandths, which is like a little too much, for a street engine. But like, if you have too little piston wall clearance, it's like ring gap. Everybody's going to know when you blow your shit up. But if you have too much, you'll just have a little bit of extra blow by. So we took this thing to the machine shop on a Sunday and had my machinist just give her the beans on the hone machine until we had an egg-shaped honed cylinder that was 8 thousandths piston to wall clearance minimum all the way around. And so we got like 11 thousandths on the skirt and like 8 thousandths on the pin. and we put these used pistons in there and gap the shit out of the rings in case I decide to spray it one day with nitrous, and just let her eat. And it runs like a brand new 12 valve would. You wouldn't know any better. But yeah, we backyard rebuilt that sun gun big time.
They're fairly forgiving, it seems like, so that's fucking sweet. And I guess I need to start beating on mine a little bit more.
Yeah, they are very forgiving. But like my 400,000 mile truck, I have several times started it, like done cold start videos in the, we get snow down here in Texas. It'd be 20 degrees outside, and I fired it up and just matted it, just put it to the floor, and it's sitting there just chugging and popping at like 1500 RPM, and all of a sudden the turbo starts building boost, and then I'll hold it at like 4,000, and I mean that thing still goes. It just stays hooked to a gooseneck trailer, and so yeah, they are quite impressive machines.
Mine's a riot. It's incredibly like mild. It's probably below 400 with the tuner on the medium setting. Fucking, but it just goes. I love it. It's a lot nicer towing than the 6.2 I had before it. And my dad had one for like 400,000 miles.
6.2
It was his
diesel.
truck. 6.2 Ford gas motor.
Oh, okay, okay. I was like,
Yeah,
yeah, the K30 came with a 6.2 diesel, and that was an absolute dog.
No, not the fucking diesel. I had a 6.2 truck with 430 gears and a 6-speed, and it was actually kind of nice towing.
Nice. My motorhome that I tow the K30 with is a V10 with the 6-speed, and it must have 488s in that Dana 80, and it'll sail down the road with the cruise control pulling the K30. Granted, I haven't put our new trailer on it that weighs like 5,000 pounds, but I mean, we went to Arkansas and went to Hot Springs, and the max speed, the limiter is 84 miles an hour, and I set the cruise at 84 in sixth gear, and it, unless you hit a pretty steep hill, it would hold sixth gear. And so that was pretty impressive. But I thought that V10 was going to be like, we're going to be going 30 miles an hour downhill,
Your ones are actually pretty okay.
Yeah,
What was
In
that?
my experience with like U-Hauls, like the V10s and are like not awful at all.
No, it sounds like a damn Ferrari under the hood.
Yeah.
That thing is singing. If I didn't have a
Yep.
wife, I'd put some headers and a muffler on that thing and a K&N, and I'd be happier than a pig in shit. But
Yeah, they do like them a little quieter than that, though.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm about to, probably put a straight pipe on the Cummins just so that
Oh,
way
don't do that. It's so loud. I had a bit like my exhaust was not falling off, but it was like one of the clamps was coming off and it was like leaking and doing things, and it like got progressively louder over the course of a month, and then I got yelled at about it because it was loud, and you know.
there's a method to the madness. It's so that way when I go and drop like $500 on the muffler I want, she'll be like, "Yeah, this is better," and happier about
What
it.
muffler costs $500 for a 12 valve or a Cummins rather?
Not 500, but I'm talking about like paying the shop to throw it in because I'm
Oh,
too
okay,
fucking
gotcha.
lazy.
Oh, come on. You just put some of those little 4-inch clamps on them. You buy them for like, I don't know. The nice ones are like 50 or something, but you can probably get cheaper ones. And
Oh yeah, if you've already got like a 4-inch straight pipe on there or something, I
yeah,
mean,
it's easy.
it's
It's easy.
Yeah. I'm trying to find the muffler. I forget what it was, but it was on Thoroughbred. It's one of them fucking where it's got the baffles in it that are helical.
What
Suppressor
does that do?
nerd shit's going.
Does that turn it into a helicopter?
No, it just helps to fight the drone, and it
Mm.
tickles the suppressor nerd in me.
Nice. So don't buy a chambered muffler. That kills horsepower. Make sure it's straight
Okay.
through. I don't think they really sell too many chambered mufflers for trucks, for diesels, but Firepunk did a video where they gained like 100 horsepower taking the muffler off of a truck. So
That's
Yeah, mine
wild.
currently has stock fucking everything because it lifted the head and I was too fucking lazy to do the exhaust at the same time that I was doing the head and everything else. Oh yeah, that's like $250 for the MBRP quiet one.
nice. Yeah. Some of them will absolutely neuter to the sound. It's hard to find a happy medium. Some of those big ones are like all you hear is the injection pump idling now. You know, you don't hear the engine anymore.
It's fucking obnoxiously loud compared to the 6.2, just at idle, like mechanically. You can hear that injection pump going and everything. I like it
Yours is
though.
a 24 valve, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, those things are ridiculous.
Richie had to go take care of his kid, but he's got a 3rd gen that's a shit ton quieter than my truck is.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, I had my 2nd gen. I probably would have given up on the project, but I bought a 4-wheel drive extended cab 2nd gen 12 valve 5-speed truck, and the motor that was in it was pissing oil outside of the head gasket. It had just tons of blow by, and so I built a friend of mine rolled his truck that we had just built a brand new 12 valve for. So I bought that motor and stuck in there, and then I opened my business. And there was something else wrong with the truck that was like going to be a major cost, and so I decided to put that money in my business instead of the truck. So I let it sit. But we had driven the truck just to test drive and make sure there wasn't any leaks. And yeah, I 100% forgot that I had water in there, and so it froze and cracked the block on that brand new 12 valve, and
oh,
that was infuriating. It had studs, injectors, governor springs, a nice 215 pump, completely resealed, and I was just like so over it because I could have drilled, and they have like a kit called lock and stitch for doing cracks, but there's always a chance that you cracked an internal water passage, you know, and you might get some water and oil or something. And the water actually pushed the head gasket out, so like you'd try and drive it and it was just dumping water. And so I had like 5 grand in the motor. I sold it for $1,000, and
that fucking blows.
but then I bought a wrecked common rail truck with that $1,000, and then so that's how I'm putting the common rail engine in there. So I plan on having a 650 wheel horsepower 2nd gen with just a single like 364 or something like that. We've done plenty of 5.9 common rail builds that are 650 wheel horsepower, just a nice little single charger. They're really responsive, run really, really good for, 650 horsepower is more than a lot of folks need.
Yeah, 650 horsepower with what's that going to be like? Well into the beyond 1,000 foot-pounds of torque is getting fucking
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah. But it is really easy to make 1,000 horsepower on one. But I also have children and a wife, and I need to be able to not die while driving my truck. So we're just gonna try and keep it simple.
I know that just doing the little bit of work that I did to mine woke it up a shit ton, and it drives totally different, like in the rain and all the other fun stuff. So I can only imagine that 1,000's got to be slightly
I want to
sketchy.
ride. I've never ridden in anything that makes more than that 750 wheel horsepower truck, and that thing is a riot. So I can't imagine some of these guys that have 1,500 horsepower trucks that they literally just drive down the street like it's a stock truck, because it does drive like a stock truck. It just has the ability to drive like an animal, you know. One day I want to ride in one of those just for the shits and grins, you know. But I'm gonna have to really trust the person. I don't know. I could never ride passenger in like my rock bouncer. I just cannot do it. I don't trust people to drive enough. But my co-pilot Doug was sitting over there like we were going to the ice cream store while we're bouncing 3-4 feet in the air, and then in his insanity fab race, like he didn't have a care in the world. And I'm like, dude, you're nuts. You're 100% nuts if you can ride with me. That's insane.
Riding passenger in my own rig scares me just because I don't really like want to go and do that. Uh, I'm perfectly fine spotting my own rig, but I
For
don't mind
sure.
riding passenger with other people, 'cause like they know their rig and I'm just along for the ride. So like they've got harnesses, they've got good seats, life is good.
Yeah.
So I hate to have to ask the stupid 24 valve questions, but would a 362 with like a 68, I think it's AFR on the charge side be too small with a 45 horsepower injector and a just like one of the small tuners on there, or would that still tow decent? Because I've got
So
one of those
this is
just sitting
where
around.
This is where I have to remind y'all that I'm just a repair shop and not a performance shop. I have a couple of my personal vehicles that run pretty good, but I don't have enough knowledge to recommend people setups. Like if there's
Totally fair.
plenty of like Firepunk Diesel page. Firepunk Diesel discussion forum is the place to go for asking questions like that. There are people that have 10 of these. They've because some people, you typically get in these trucks and they get into drag racing and they blow up 10 different setups and they're like, oh, I like this one the best. I've never done that. I put a 6265 on my tow rig. I like it okay. It could be better, it could be worse. I put a 6360. The only one I ever changed the turbo on was the K30 used to have a 6265, and I noticed a substantial increase in horsepower when I went to the 6368 Borg Warner. But I also changed a lot of other things, like I added a fast 290 gallon per hour lift pump versus I had a block mounted pump before, and then I added a manifold mounted wastegate, so now I don't have to deal with like extremely high exhaust back pressure at 5,000 RPM. And so like I changed too many variables to know for a fact that it was just the turbo. Um,
Totally
but
fair.
I take that back like one step. My 6265 on my maroon truck, I had that 12-valve truck that I cracked the block on. Before it blew up, I had pretty much two identical trucks. They were both mechanical lift pumps. They were both 215 horsepower injection pumps. They both had very similar sized injectors, and they both had 18 degrees of timing. And one of them had the 6265, and one of them had the 6368. And that 6368 truck will bury the 120-mile-an-hour speedometer at like par throttle. But it was pretty sluggish. They're both they're both 5-speed trucks, and the 6368 was noticeably more sluggish in between gear shifts. But like once you got into the power, like if it was an automatic truck, that thing would rip. But every time you shift, you lose boost. Versus my other truck with the smaller 6265 is instantaneous turbo response in every gear. But then like you're really pushing it if you want to go like 110, you gotta like floor it. Um, and so that's my only real world experience with that. So
Totally fair.
I don't like
Kinda
talking
answers
out my
my
ass
question.
and telling people that shit that I don't personally know. Um, so that's where I kind of stop talking about stuff there.
Totally fair. I just figured you'd have more experience running around with a bunch of because you
For
work on
sure.
a bunch of second
Yeah,
gens.
and we've built 3 common rails that make 600 to 650 wheel horsepower. One makes 750. And then I've got, I do have a little bit of history and performance stuff with our shop, but it's not enough to recommend people what they should do because there's a ton of things that go into turbo sizing and injector sizing and stuff like that.
Yeah, completely understandable.
And then like my other truck with the 6265, we went to a dyno day and I decided to bump the timing from 18 to 26, and that absolutely killed the horsepower on the bottom end. Like it would not light the charger until 3,000 RPM it seemed. And so, bad experience. Now I know not to do that. So yeah, 18 to 20 seems to be like the sweet spot for most people. Nice and good throttle response and still pretty good power over stock timing. But
Yeah,
that's
I don't.
poverty pump stuff, not your VP. You have the ability to adjust timing on the fly. We don't.
Yeah, that's basically all my tuner does is I think it adjusts timing and duration, but I don't even know enough about that to really talk about it either. I
Hmm.
just know that I plugged it in and on the third position, the truck gets out of its own way. On the second position, it gets 24 miles to the gallon and kind of gets out of its own way.
Do you have like a fast on that thing?
I have one of those Raptor pumps, just like the
Do you
block
have a
mounted,
dummy
but
light or a fuel pressure gauge or anything?
I still have to put that in there. I put the Raptor pump in there with the
Living life on the edge.
Well,
yes.
it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that. So I have a um oh man, the Edge thing. What the fuck do they
Hmm.
call them? It's just the um. It's not a tuner. It's just a like basically a gauge, so I can see all the
Yeah.
EGTs, fuel pressure, all that stuff. Well, the fuel pressure just started. I think the sensors messed up because it would run like sometimes you turn it on, it's at 50, sometimes it's at 30, sometimes it's at 18, and then I watched it just like trickle down to 0, and it was still running without any issues. Like the sensor's got to be fucked.
For sure.
There's no way. There's no way. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. Maybe it's about to blow, but
No, it sounds like
I
the
just,
sensor definitely shot.
I just ripped that. And it was that edge thing was just. They sit in the sun. I can't imagine those things last at all in Texas
Yeah,
or
they
any place
really
warm.
complicated tuning on VP trucks these days. Like you used to have the old Edge comp box that looked like a trailer
Yep.
brake control module. I miss the days of those. That was before my time as a really even a technician. But those used to be like, in my opinion, the best way to go because it's
Yep.
simple. You want to go
Yep.
faster, you press the arrow for up. You want to go
Yeah.
slower, you press the arrow for down. And if you really want to church it up, you can adjust the fueling in between those levels.
Yep.
But now you can get that same tuner, but it's got to have a stupid ass display that, yeah, you're right. In the Texas sun, unless you park in a garage, that thing's going to be shit in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. It's
Or you
cooked.
have
I haven't
really
even
dark
had.
window tint.
Yeah, I haven't had this thing that long either, and it's just. Yeah.
Or you
The
get the
actual.
Quadzilla that
Yeah.
requires an app on your phone. Like, why does
It's
everything have to
stupid.
be so
I don't-
freaking
And
complicated
then,
these days?
God
That's
forbid
why
they
I
go
went
out of
with the
business or
XCT.
stop supporting it for any reason, and that app disappears because, in 4 years when Apple's, 4 phones ahead and Android or whatever is 4 iterations of their software and they phase out all the old shit, guess what app's gone? Your tuner app, unless you've got a dedicated phone on that
Yep.
operating system that would still run it. This is all, assuming that they'd ever run out of business or they stop updating it. But I mean, it's already an old app. Like it already kind of doesn't look that great from what I understand. Like I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely don't like
It
the
makes me nervous when
Quadzilla
this
app.
stuff is.
That's why I got the XZT Plus. It just clicks in and then it runs off a toggle switch.
Nice. Yeah, the Edge Easy module is my kind of go-to for people that aren't really looking for needing, gauges and lift pumps and all that stuff. It's just a nice little like 75 horse tune that goes in there. Really wakes them up.
Yeah.
But back to that truck with that Raptor lift pump. Did yours have the block mounted pump or did it have an in-tank pump already?
In tank.
And you're pulling through the in-tank?
It's still hooked up.
So how are you getting fuel for the Raptor? You have a sump?
It goes through there and then line pressure in. That's probably retarded and probably
Oh,
needs to
that
get
is
fixed.
absolutely a terrible idea. Because if your factory fuel pump can't flow enough to feed the Raptor's pointless at this point, unless it's somehow managing to suck through the factory fuel pump in the tank. But that's a problem that we see quite often when trucks come in with dead VPs. Is we'll see that they had a fast installed or the Raptor lift pump, but it already had an in tank conversion done, and a lot of people will disconnect the in tank fuel pump. Whenever they're connecting their fast, because that's how most of those harnesses hook up. And now you've got a dead in tank lift pump that you're trying to suck fuel through. So you're just barely getting enough fuel pressure to get the truck started and you're going down the road starving that VP and killing it. So Blue Chip sells a nice little well, I mean you can piece it together yourself. You got half a brain. I just went to O'Reilly's and bought a little LED and a low pressure switch. But just at least get a dummy light put on that thing to where if it goes below like 5 PSI, you can know, because even if the truck had a 300 gallon per hour fast, all it takes is one bad batch of fuel to clog up the water separator, and then you can kill the pump just the same. So
Yeah, I gotta get one of those on there. I'm planning on throwing one of the column mount like digital gauges on there with boost, EGT, and fuel pressure, because that should cover everything that truck needs.
for sure.
Uh, and I do plan on unfucking that fuel system. I just ran out of money and had to put a head gasket in and had also blown the rock crawler up the same day, so that was like a $5,000 day.
Kicked you while you were down.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
just leave it on the low tune until you get that fixed because you don't want to buy a VP. Those things are spendy for a good one.
yeah. It doesn't seem like there is a lot of good ones out there, but I was looking at the what the fuck is it? The Bosch rebuilt ones seem like they're decent enough. So if I'm gonna gamble on one, I'm gonna gamble on that. And then to make matters worse, it's a high output.
Mm-hmm.
I have a high output pump I could ship you.
That would be cool. Let me know what you
It
want
probably is
for it.
600,000. Maybe not. It's probably been changed at least twice, so it probably still has some life. But you can have that one. It's
The
on the
one
house.
that's on the truck looks newer. I don't know when it was done, but it does not look like the rest of the motor, so I'm gonna guess it's been done at some point relatively soon.
Mine says
Or-
reman on it. So
But yeah, I have to drop some money into it. I blew a lot of money on getting the rock crawler back up and going. That was shafts and other fun shit like RCV outer uh, slugs. Wow, my brain shut off there. So I did all of that shit in one go, and then I did the head gasket, set of studs, the RV injectors, and the tuner in one sitting.
Yeah,
So
that's a lot.
I'm just gonna. The next thing is getting an actual exhaust on it because it's still got a fucking shitty exhaust on it, and then I doing gauges as well at that point, just because I'm gonna be in there. I've got another manifold with the 362 sitting on it, and I have had analysis paralysis if I want to put a tow turbo on it, like one of the HX35 replacements with a slightly bigger housing, or what I want to do with it. So it's just kind of been
Yeah,
fairly
I'm pretty
reliable.
leery
and-
on modified chargers. I mean, they've been proven to make big power. I mean, there's been like some modified HE351s that have been in the 4-digit horsepower range, but the longevity on those modified chargers just does not seem to be there. So I've seen just post after post after post, and the turbo builders always seem to have some chicken shit reason as to why it failed. Oh well, this line was too small, or you oversped it, or you must have had a tiny boost leak somewhere. I don't know. There just seems to be a lot of failures associated with those modified chargers versus I can tell you my Board Warner's had some massive boost leaks and towing trailers and like barked the shit out of that thing. I mean, on the rock bouncer, you're on throttle, off throttle, and you're barking the shit out of that charger. And I have never broke one, not once. And just EGTs through the roof. I mean, over 1600 degrees for extended periods of time. I've never melted a turbine wheel. Just all these things that a lot of these aftermarket chargers seem to have problems with. A genuine Board Warner has never let me down. And so I would recommend buying something like a fat shaft from industrial or somebody like that.
Yeah, I've got the BD362 that I've been looking, or that's on the manifold. I just have to like go buy the downpipe and put that in if I wanted to go that route. Once again, I just overanalyzed everything and got fucking tired of it and walked away from the project because the truck's running and I've got other shit going on. But you're absolutely right about buying like a decent turbo and doing it once.
Yeah.
At this point, though, we've been going for a little bit, or around 2 hours. Starting to slow down a little bit. Do you have any questions for us?
Not that I can think of. Where do y'all live at?
I'm
I'm
out of
in Mass.
Tennessee.
Yeah.
Y'all all spoke at once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Luke, you go first. I'd
I'm
like
in
we both
Tennessee.
paused. We both paused to wait for each other, and that didn't
Yeah,
work.
it happened.
I'm out of Tennessee. I live like an hour east of AOP, and I'm an hour and a half from Windrock. So
Nice.
I'm in a pretty sweet spot for that.
See, like if I lived where you lived, I would have given the 14 volts another chance because it's like it's no harm if you drive an hour and your shit breaks on the first day or something like that. But if I drive 20 hours and my shit breaks, I'm be pissed. So
Yeah.
that's why. Anyways, go on to where else you live, Tennessee, and somebody else said something.
I'm in Massachusetts, and Richie, who isn't here,
If
is
you
in
held a gun to
Connecticut.
my head and made me point at a map, I wouldn't know where that's at. I can point to Texas
That's
on the map.
wild. Yeah, you can point to Texas on a map.
You're in the Northwest, aren't you?
Northeast.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's east
Wow.
of Pennsylvania,
Below
up in that
Maine.
little corner below Maine.
Isn't Maine in the West?
No, that's in the east.
Oh, wow.
West is
I'm gonna have to
Washington
pull out a
and,
freaking map.
and Alaska and what
Oh
else?
my
is
gosh! You just
Oregon?
wait on. You're on the East Coast.
Yeah, we're East
Did
Coast.
my dumbass say west? I got west and
Yeah.
east.
Yeah, you did.
God,
But I know. I
oh
figured,
my
you know, you
gosh.
couldn't have two states on the wrong side of the country. You'd not have just like a misunderstanding. And
California's on the east coast. Oh man, I was looking at the map upside down. Yeah.
Yeah, we're
My
out of the East
navigational
Coast.
skills are weak at best. Damn.
So don't
Texas,
let
you
you leave.
probably have a lot to worry about with Texas. It's a pretty big
Is there
state.
wheeling out there? And where'd you say
There is.
Massachusetts?
There is. It's definitely a different culture than it is out, you know, in Tennessee or out west or probably most places. But there is a good amount of wheeling to be had in the Northeast. It's just you have to navigate how you do it a little differently. At least if you want to go to like the good places.
Yeah.
For sure. It's a
Yeah,
lot
so down
more.
here in Texas, there's only crawling parks, which is my like arch nemesis. I just don't enjoy crawling. It's
Yeah.
not my thing. I want to be wide open, slinging mud and rocks and shit. That's just what makes me happy.
Yeah.
And so I'm stuck in somebody else's paradise. Like I'm sure somebody else would just kill to be as close to these parks as I am, but I just absolutely despise it.
Yeah.
Low crawling can be fun, but I do enjoy a bit of wheel speed. I'm really happy that I ended up in Tennessee. I used to live in Connecticut. New England wheeling's fucking awesome. But Tennessee wheeling is like, I enjoy the shit out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, Tennessee. I definitely get down with some Tennessee guys. And then was there a third person talking? I didn't hear where I heard where two people were from.
He had to go. His kid was having a
Oh.
meltdown.
Oh, okay. Nice.
But
Yeah.
he is
Kids will
in
do that.
he's in
I have two
Connecticut.
of them. Nice.
So
Yeah. Yeah, for me to go anywhere fun, we used to have a place called Trees Ranch off road, which it closed down because the owner sold part of it and got a bunch of money and don't need the risk of wheeling out there, some lawsuit or something. But anyways, that was the only place in South Texas where you could really hammer down. And we got to drive to Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Tennessee really to have any fun for my rig. So that's the predicament I'm in. So that's why we bought a motorhome that we haven't really used but once to go to Arkansas. And then I opened my shop. So that was a doozy. I bought the motorhome, had the rig together, and we were going to start traveling across the country. And then that incident happened at the shop, and I opened my own business, and we didn't have time after that. So we're just now getting the business to where it's like at idle. We're not having to build onto anything anymore, and we can just sit back and relax and enjoy some of the fruits of our labor and get back into the wheeling. But
Hell
we do
yeah.
have to make a hell of a drive to have any fun. Arkansas is like 15 hours from me, like Hot Springs.
hey, at least you're
So-
centered. If I want to go to half those places, it's like 40 hours.
Yeah, I guess I'm.
It's downside of living in a corner, I guess.
Yeah, we do. We're a little closer to Moab than you are,
Yeah.
So I want to go out there too one day, but I just don't know that that's really going to be my forte. But we'll give it a shot at least once.
Yeah.
But
Johnson
How are you
Valley,
liking
I
anyhow,
them
think,
boggers?
could be fun.
So far, I love them because it's the first sticky tire I've had, and it's also a 47-inch tire. Previously everything I've had has been Super Swamper, like DOT compound, which sucks. And then you get the old Super Swamper promise where you buy the 47s are Super Swampers, which only actually measure 45. They got a dictate measure to measure tires around that place. But hopefully that joke didn't go over your head.
Oh, nope. I got it.
Okay. All right. But my 44-inch boggers were only 41s, and so yeah, I've always had kind of shitty tire combos because stickies are expensive, dude. Those tires like retail, Scott Goforth sells them for like $650 a piece, so you can get a pretty good price on them there. But if you have to buy them anywhere else, they're like it was gonna be like $7,000 for 5 tires shipped, and I was like, holy shit, that's a lot of money, And but I found a set of, did I say 7 tires shipped? I meant 5 tires shipped. Oh, 7,000 for 5 tires shipped.
Yeah,
But
you said 7
I
for
found
5.
yeah, I found 5 of them on the blim list for 3,200 shipped to my door, and there's not a single thing wrong with them at all. So that was plus number one, like half off tires, hell yeah. And then the sticky compound does seem to grab well, but the lugs fold over so easy. Like if you wanted them to be, if you were like really serious about it, you'd probably cut half the lug off. But um, I want the lugs there for whenever I'm on like loose climbs and like I need some traction, because I've been in the situation like where my 42s were getting kind of bald and I didn't have anything to like bite into the earth. That's what I want these tires for. I want them to like sling some shit. Like there's some ruts in my yard just from doing a boost launch. They're still there from 6 months ago, or yeah, about 6 months ago now. And I mean, they're just deeper than shit. I mean, these things absolutely eat. I mean, they're like a paddle tire. But the lugs do fold over extremely easy on obstacles, but there's still rubber contact in the ledge. So, I mean, I don't know. Some people probably hate them, but so far I love them. They're obnoxious, and I love that.
Well, they're just designed to fucking move a shit ton of dirt, and they do a really good fucking job of it.
Yeah, I think like they would probably hurt me on some slick rock that doesn't have ledges for the lugs to grab. Like I think it would probably actually hurt me a lot on that because the lugs are going to fold over and you're just going to slide right back down the hill. But if you have something for that lug to grab a hold of, I think they're actually going to do really well. But time will tell, and we're going to test the sidewall thickness on them whenever we get the axle techs on there and really start beating the snot out of this thing. Um, that's really the next thing I think. I'm like, you can only beat on something so hard before you're gonna have carcass failures on tires and stuff. So I think that's really gonna be the next weak link is tires.
Yep.
And if I have too many carcass failures, then I'm just gonna buy the 46-inch USDs because I don't know that there's been. I might be talking out my ass here, but I don't know if there's been a single carcass failure on those because the sidewalls are just so thick. But allegedly they don't really grip worth a shit. But everybody's got
Yeah,
their own
they
opinion.
don't. At least in
With enough
Tennessee, they
wheel
kind of
speed,
suck.
anything is possible.
This is also
That's what
true,
my
but
that's what my DOT 42s taught me.
Yeah, you can just pinball through whatever with enough
Yeah,
speed. You'll get
yeah.
to the top.
But I have liked the sticky compound so far, and I don't know if it is the sticky compound or just the 47-inch tire or just the big ass lugs that made it so much better. But it really did do pretty well rock crawling down here. I wish I'd have had them for the race because at Insanity Fab we were racing on top of snow and mud, and those 47-inch LTVs, they just couldn't grab any traction. If we were like, I can't believe I won the whole shot on the. I think I just had some luck there, like a big piled up in the corner. I just happened to get out in front of everybody, but like I was just. If you watch the video, it looks like I'm just taking off extremely slow. But if you look and you pay attention, I'm at 60 pounds of boost in third gear, 4 high, and I'm just like blowing the tires off this thing. You're talking like 90, 100 miles an hour with a wheel spin, but I'm not going anywhere because there's just no traction to be had. And if you would have had those boggers on there, that wouldn't have been a problem. Those things, they're going to bite no matter what, even if it's in the snow. So I wish I'd have had those for the race. That would have been fun, but I probably would have broke the 14 bolts a lot easier then.
yeah,
So
that definitely true. Stickies break way more shit. I went from DOTs to stickies just in a 40, and my axle shafts that I was replacing once a season were now like breaking once a trip. So,
mm.
eh,
Breaking
stickies.
anything else.
I'm
Yeah,
hoping to get to a
I'm
point
thinking
where
body.
the weak link, my goal has always been this to spend enough money to where the weak link is the traction between the tire and the earth. you know, um,
That is the ideal. Yeah, you just can't hold. I don't know if that's a good
I
one
probably
though.
should have like
That'd be
built
like
a.
being on ice skates, right? You just can't get any traction. I don't
I
know. I
feel
don't
like
know.
at some point in time there's gonna just be mechanical give because once you start adding like, gear reduction into the mix, the amount of torque going to shit is a fuck ton. It's eventually
Yeah,
just gonna break something.
yeah, and I've seen some people blow up the planetary gear sets in their Magnum boxes and stuff. So I try not to use that unless I'm crawling, so that it's just in the 1-to-1 straight through. You know. But yeah, splitting the 205 is gonna be the next weak link, and I'm not looking forward to that. It'll be impressive and shitty all at the same time. But
Yeah,
at
that
some point, things can just not take shock loads. Is just what it comes down to.
yeah,
Shock
and
loads kill things.
the more horse ponies and torque ponies you throw through everything, the more that it's likely to explode.
Yes, sir. Well, the wife is staring me down through the window here, so I think it's time we call her a day.
Sounds good. One last thing. Could you give us a piece of dad advice? Because, end it on a high note.
Yeah. I'm terrible on thinking on my feet, but man, just making time for your children. Like, I try my best to, I could work, till 10 o'clock every night on shop stuff and never get caught up. So I try and hang it up at 6 to 7 o'clock every day and have family time. Just because I just, the kids they grow up real quick, and so I try and make sure that I'm there for them every day and watch a movie or play a game, do something with them, so that I'm not just focused on myself or the business. So that's my little tidbit there, because time flies.
Well, thank you for making time for us tonight. What are the best socials to follow you on?
Facebook, YouTube, and then TikTok. I still plan on posting there. It's going to be few and far between. But
And
if you got
then
if you got the app, you might as well, I guess.
it's
But
all
Facebook is
under
where all the activity's at.
Stratemann Automotive.
Yep, across all the platforms.
Well, thank you very much for coming on, dude. You killed it, and have a good night. Go spend some time with your kids and family.